Chapter 1809. Qin Feiyang suppressed the anger in his heart, looked at Sima Kuan and said, "If there's anything, just come at me. There's no need to make things difficult for a small character like him." Small character? Indeed, he's just a small character. If it were someone else, a person like him would be thrown away like cannon fodder at any time. But you're different. You're Qin Feiyang. As long as it's the people around you, no matter how insignificant their strength is, you'll treat them as important as your own life. Sima Kuan said, "You really know me well." Qin Feiyang said gloomily, "Of course. Although I've never seen you before, I've had people investigate your character and conduct." Sima Kuan laughed. Qin Feiyang said, "Then you should also know what will happen to those who go against me in the end. Little guy, don't be too confident. We're not the opponents you've encountered before." That's it. 3 days later, I'll come to find you personally. At that time, you must let me see your ability. Sima Kuan smiled proudly, grabbed the image crystal in Yan Wei's hand, and crushed it with a crack. Immediately, everyone's shadows dissipated in front of Qin Feiyang's eyes. "Damn it, damn it!" Qin Feiyang roared towards the sky. The anger that had been suppressed in his heart burst out in an instant. The self-blame in the depths of his heart was like a tide, drowning him completely. Last time at the miracle, Yan Wei could have already succeeded and retreated. It was him who made Yan Wei once again return to the side of Zhuge Mingyang and the imperial preceptor. In other words, it was him who pushed Yan Wei into the fire pit with one hand. All these years, Yan Wei had sacrificed too much for him. He had always wanted to find an opportunity to make it up to Yan Wei, but now he didn't even have the chance to make it up to him. Why? People like the Fiend Ancestor, the Imperial Preceptor, and Mu Tianyong had always been living in this world, harming the human world. However, a righteous and sincere person like Yan Wei had fallen into the hands of evil people. God, can't you be a little more fair? At this moment, Qin Feiyang's heart was filled with hatred. I hate this damned God, that damned Fiend Ancestor. Hate him even more, hate himself even more. Shanghai. Wind Moon Pavilion. The entire VIP lounge was filled with a bone-piercing smell of blood. The Imperial Preceptor's face was ferocious as he kept waving his dagger. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The flesh on Yan Wei's upper body had almost all been cut off. The ghastly white bones were a ghastly sight. The black-haired old man and the shop assistant could not bear to watch such a bloody scene, because just looking at it made them feel unbearable. However, Yan Wei's expression did not change in the slightest. It was as if he had lost consciousness and could not feel any pain. Of course. Everyone knew that Yan Wei definitely did not lose consciousness. He was relying on his strong willpower to endure the pain of being cut alive. It was hard to imagine. How strong was one's willpower to be able to do this? Even though Yan Wei was their enemy, they couldn't help but admire him from the bottom of their hearts. Even Sima Kuan was the same. In the face of the pain of being cut alive, no one would be able to remain calm. But this person didn't even blink his eyes. This kind of willpower was truly terrifying. Even he, an early-stage war god, was ashamed of his inferiority. "Stop!" Suddenly, Sima Kuan waved his hand. The Imperial Preceptor was slightly taken aback. He withdrew his dagger and looked at Sima Kuan suspiciously, asking, "Lord, what is the meaning of this?" Sima Kuan ignored him and looked at Yan Wei. As expected of Qin Feiyang's man, no wonder he cares so much about you. Don't talk nonsense. If you want to kill me, then do it, Yan Wei said expressionlessly. Haha, not afraid of death. You are a talent. How about this, follow me? As long as you are as loyal to me as you are to Qin Feiyang, I will give you whatever you want. Sima Kuan laughed. What? Lord, he is a spy. The Imperial Preceptor's expression changed as he hurriedly said. Sima Kuan glanced at the Imperial Preceptor with an extremely unfriendly gaze and said, When I don't ask you to speak, you'd better not interrupt." Yes, the imperial preceptor's pupils constricted as he hurriedly replied, respectfully. The dignified imperial preceptor of the great Qin, and now a war god, is like a servant, nodding and bowing to others. Don't you think it's sad? Yan Wei looked at the imperial preceptor with a face full of ridicule. These words undoubtedly poked the imperial preceptor's Achilles' heel, and his old eyes flashed with a fierce light. You don't have to provoke him, because even if you lend him a few hundred guts, he wouldn't dare to rebel against Lord Demon Ancestor. Zhuge Xinyan, am I right? Sima Kuan glanced at Yan Wei and asked the imperial preceptor. Yes. The imperial preceptor nodded repeatedly. You are indeed made to be a servant, Yan Wei mocked. The imperial preceptor glanced at Yan Wei, and a fierce look flashed across his face. Sima Kuan looked at Yan Wei and said, Answer this, Lord. Yan Wei pondered for a moment, then grinned and said, Just now you said that as long as I follow you, you will give me whatever I want, right? Yes. Sima Kuan nodded. Then I want Zhuge Xinyan's life. Yan Wei snickered. You are courting death. The imperial preceptor was furious, but he didn't dare to make a move because of Sima Kuan. That won't do. Lord Demon Ancestor spent a lot of effort to nurture Zhuge Xinyan. Sima Kuan shook his head. Yan Wei sneered. Then what are you still talking about? Hurry up and kill me, or you will die in my hands sooner or later. You. Sima Kuan disdainfully looked at the black-haired elder and ordered, Send him to the Demon Pagoda. Demon Pagoda? The black-haired elder was stunned. The imperial preceptor was also stunned. After regaining his senses, he hurriedly said, Lord, he is just a small fry. Why are you sending him to the Demon Pagoda? A small fry can deceive you for so many years, and you still have the nerve to be noisy? Sima Kuan raised his eyebrows. The imperial preceptor immediately lowered his head, his expression extremely ugly. Humph! If this lord had to choose, this lord would rather choose him than you, because he is more intelligent than you. Sima Kuan snorted and looked at the black-haired elder. After reaching the Demon Pagoda, hand him over to King Yan. With that, Sima Kuan waved his hand and disappeared with the imperial preceptor. King Yan, the black-haired elder murmured. His expression was full of fear. He then looked at the servant and ordered, Clean this place up. Not a single trace of blood can be found. Yes. The servant nodded. Whoosh! The black-haired elder grabbed Yan Wei and flew out of the window, flying out of the city. Demon Pagoda! King Yan! The servant raised his head and looked at the black-haired elder's back. An imperceptible light flashed in his eyes. He then turned and strode out of the room, returning to the hall on the first floor. Servant, what happened up there? Did Lord Sima Kuan come back? When the people in the hall saw the servant coming down, they immediately asked at once. Nothing, just a small matter. The servant shook his head and smiled, then walked to the counter and picked up a rag. Suddenly, the servant slapped his head and ran to the horse-faced servant next to him. He smiled and begged, Brother, can you help me clean the VIP lounge? Clean the VIP lounge? The horse-faced servant was stunned. He glanced at the customers around and whispered, Just now, did a bloody incident happen up there? Yes. The servant nodded. As expected, the horse-faced servant narrowed his eyes and asked suspiciously, You asked me to clean the VIP lounge. Then what are you going to do? The servant said, I suddenly remembered that I have something to do at home, so I have to go back and deal with it. Help me. I'll treat you to a drink next time. The horse-faced servant's eyes lit up, and he chuckled. You said it. Don't go back on your word. We've known each other for so many years. Do you think I'm the kind of person who goes back on my word? The servant snorted with some dissatisfaction, then stuffed the rag into the horse-faced servant's hand and smiled. Don't worry. I promise I'll let you drink to your heart's content." After that, the servant turned and walked out of the restaurant, standing in the middle of the crowd on the street. He seemed to inadvertently look up at the restaurant, then sped up and quickly disappeared. Outside the city, the mountains were undulating, and the ancient trees towered into the sky. There were traces of fierce beasts everywhere in the mountains, and they were extremely strong. Even pseudo-god level beasts could be seen everywhere. After the black-haired elder left the city with Yen Wei, they went straight into the depths of the mountains. Soon, the shop assistant also left the city and stood on top of a mountain ridge. He glanced at the ferocious beasts in the mountains and took out a thumb-sized black jade pendant from his chinkuan bag. He hung it around his neck and entered the mountains without looking back. If Qin Feiyang was here, he would definitely be shocked. That black jade pendant was actually made of hidden soul stone. As for the black-haired elder, after going deep into the mountains for dozens of miles, he slowly slowed down, turned his head to look at Yen Wei and sneered, "Do you know? You're very unlucky." "What do you mean?" Yen Wei frowned. "Although you saved your life, you'll fall into the hands of the Flame King soon. Do you know what kind of person the Flame King is?" The black-haired elder said, "I don't know." Yen Wei shook his head. "Let me tell you, he's a devil who eats people without spitting out the bones. Do you know what happened to those who fell into his hands?" The black-haired elder didn't hide the gloating in his eyes. "It's nothing more than living a life worse than death." Yen Wei sneered. The black-haired elder was stunned, but he didn't show any fear. But thinking about it, even in the face of such a cruel method of being skinned alive, other methods seemed to be nothing to this person. However, Yen Wei's disdainful attitude made the black-haired elder extremely unhappy, especially when he remembered that not long ago in the Wind Moon Pavilion he actually nodded and bowed to this person. The anger in his heart surged uncontrollably. Whoosh! Immediately, a cold light flashed in his eyes, and he swooped down with Yen Wei and landed in a valley below. "What are you doing?" Yen Wei looked at him coldly. "What am I doing?" The black-haired elder smiled sinisterly and threw Yen Wei to the ground. Yen Wei's body was already full of scars, and now that the black-haired elder threw him, the heart-wrenching pain suddenly became more intense. But Yen Wei still didn't even frown. He climbed up from the ground and stared at the black-haired elder with a lifeless look, showing an extremely strong attitude. Chapter 1810. But it was this kind of look, this kind of expression, that made the black-haired old man even more angry. It felt as if Yen Wei was silently mocking him. "I don't believe that in this world there are really people who are not afraid of death." With a stern shout, the black-haired old man lifted his foot and ruthlessly kicked Yen Wei in the stomach. Bang! Yen Wei flew out on the spot and hit the ground dozens of meters away. With a bang, a big pit appeared on the ground. Yen Wei lay in the big pit, his expression still unchanged. He slowly got up and walked out of the big pit step by step. The blood on his body mixed with the mud, making him look extremely miserable. Moreover, after walking out of the big pit, he looked at the black-haired old man again. That dead gaze, without the slightest bit of anger. It was as if everything the black-haired old man did had nothing to do with him. This look almost drove the black-haired old man crazy. He took a step to the front of Yen Wei, grabbed Yen Wei's neck with his left hand, and punched Yen Wei's face with his right hand. Yen Wei's face suddenly split open, and blood splattered everywhere. "Shouldn't you hate me for torturing you like this? Shouldn't you have the intention to kill me? What do you mean by this expression? Quickly be angry. Quickly roar. Quickly say that you hate me." The black-haired old man roared as he punched Yen Wei's face again and again. But Yen Wei, like a robot without feelings, did not make a sound no matter how the black-haired old man tortured him. Finally, on the contrary, The black-haired old man was so tired that he was panting. At this time, Yan Wei just opened his mouth, his words were full of disdain, and said, "You are not qualified to make me hate you." When the black-haired old man heard this, his expression instantly became incomparably ferocious. Like a mad beast, he kicked Yan Wei over. "Not even qualified to make you hate me? Bastard, do you know who you are talking to? Do you believe that this old man will end your dog life right now?" The black-haired old man stepped on Yan Wei's chest and looked down at Yan Wei with a sinister smile. Yan Wei mocked. "Then you better think about how you're going to explain this to Sima Kuan." "Haha!" The black-haired old man raised his head and laughed angrily. To be able to remain so calm even now, he really was a person who wasn't afraid of death. Suddenly, he stopped laughing and lowered his head to stare at Yan Wei. "Do you really think I don't dare to kill you? You should know that the number of ferocious beasts here is not ordinary, and they are also not ordinary strong. When Lord Sima Kuan asks about it, I'll say that we were attacked by ferocious beasts on the way and you accidentally died under their claws. I don't think Lord Sima Kuan will investigate a small fry like you to the end." The black-haired old man laughed sinisterly. Yan Wei said, and then, "You want me to kneel and beg for mercy? Smart. As long as you kneel down and kowtow to me right now and beg me to let you go, I will spare your dog life." The black-haired old man said. Yan Wei said indifferently, "Do you think I will beg for mercy from a dog? Preposterous. You actually dare to insult this old man. It seems that I have no choice but to kill you today. Go to hell." The black-haired old man was furious. The power of the false god emerged, exuding a destructive aura. "Young master, farewell. Fatso Lu Hong. Brother Wolf, I'll be leaving first. Take care." Looking at this scene, Yan Wei's expression was still without the slightest bit of fear. He slowly closed his eyes and murmured with a smile, "Shua." However, at this moment, a figure silently rushed into the valley. When he saw that the black-haired old man was actually going to kill Yan Wei, the figure immediately took out a dagger and rushed behind the black-haired old man like lightning. Accompanied by a puff, the dagger immediately sank into the black-haired old man's chi. Faced with this sudden change, the black-haired old man was shocked. He quickly turned his head, and his old face was immediately filled with disbelief. And with his chi destroyed, the power of the false god quickly dissipated. Sensing this change, Yan Wei suspiciously opened his eyes. When he saw the person standing behind the black-haired old man, his expression suddenly froze. "How could it be you?" That's right. The person who suddenly appeared and saved Yan Wei was the shop assistant he had met in the Wind Moon Pavilion. Faced with Yan Wei's question, the shop assistant's face showed a trace of a smile, but he did not say anything. He grabbed the black-haired old man and then brought Yan Wei to an unfamiliar place. This was a secret room about 10 feet wide and completely sealed off. The entire secret room was empty and there was nothing in it. The shop assistant threw the black-haired old man on the ground and looked at Yan Wei with a smile. "It's safe now." "What is this place?" "It's still you. Aren't you the shop assistant of the Wind Moon Pavilion? Why did you save me?" Yan Wei looked at the secret room and the shop assistant in surprise. "This is my spatial divine item," the shop assistant said. "Spatial divine item?" Yan Wei was stunned and his eyes were filled with disbelief. A shop assistant of a restaurant actually had a spatial divine item? No, a shop assistant of a restaurant has a low status. How could he have a spatial divine item? He pondered for a moment and realized that something was wrong. He looked up at the shop assistant and said in a deep voice, "Who the hell are you?" "Even if I tell you, you don't necessarily know me," the shop assistant said. "Whether I know you or not, I won't know until you tell me." Yan Wei's expression was full of vigilance. To think that someone from Shanghai would actually save him. This was too strange. The black-haired old man also looked at the shop assistant in surprise. The shop assistant was silent for a while, then took out a facial restoration pill and threw it into his mouth. After a while, an unfamiliar face appeared in Yen Wei's line of sight. It was a middle-aged man with a slender figure, a rough face, and mottled white hair on his temples, giving people a sense of vicissitudes. "Who the hell are you?" "In my impression, there is no such person as you in Shanghai." The black-haired old man looked at the middle-aged man and said in surprise and anger, "I've never said that I'm from Shanghai." The middle-aged man sneered and looked at Yen Wei. "Do you know me?" Yen Wei shook his head. The middle-aged man said, "My name is Jiang Jingyi, and I have another name, Jiang Qianqing." "What? You are Jiang Jingyi?" Yen Wei looked at the middle-aged man with a dumbfounded expression. "Yes." The middle-aged man nodded. "How could it be you? Aren't you with old Master Qin? Why are you in Shanghai now?" Yen Wei was surprised. He had never seen Jiang Jingyi before, but he knew Jiang Jingyi's identity. It was Luo Qingzhu's father. It's a long story. I'll just say it briefly. A few years ago, I planned to enter the miracle, but when the miracle opened, old Master Qin asked me to come to the Sea of Reincarnation to help Qin Feiyang's mother. Later, when I found her, I wanted to persuade her to go back and not take the risk, but she didn't listen. I had no choice but to follow her to the demonic Dragon Island. Jiang Jingyi said, "What? The mistress is also on the demonic Dragon Island?" Yen Wei was shocked. Jiang Jingyi said, "To be exact, she is in Shanghai now." "Also in Shanghai," Yen Wei murmured. "Yes." When we entered the demonic Dragon Island, we lurked in Shanghai to find the whereabouts of Emperor Qin and Lu Yin. Jiang Jingyi said, "Emperor Qin? Lu Yin?" Yen Wei was suspicious. Jiang Jingyi said, "Emperor Qin is Qin Feiyang's grandfather, and Lu Yun is Qin Feiyang's grandfather." "Then did you find them?" Yen Wei asked. "Yes. After we sneaked into Shanghai, we soon found that they were imprisoned in the demonic tower. But no matter how hard we searched, we couldn't find this so-called demonic tower. Later, I found out that the Wind Moon Pavilion was actually Sima Kuen's restaurant. So I disguised myself and sneaked into the Wind Moon Pavilion, hoping to find Sima Kuen and the others. However, in the past few years, no one mentioned the demonic tower and no one went to the demonic tower, and I didn't dare to ask. So I waited until today. Originally, I wanted to follow you and save you when you reached the demonic tower, but I didn't expect that this person wanted to kill you halfway. I had no choice but to take action in advance." Jiang Jingyi sighed. Now that his identity was exposed, it wouldn't be so easy to get the black-haired old man to tell him the location of the demonic tower. "So that's the case." When Yen Wei heard this, he nodded in realization and said, "What about Mistress? Where is she now?" Jiang Jingyi said, "She is in the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion." "Heavenly Treasure Pavilion?" Yen Wei was stunned. The Heavenly Treasure Pavilion is the largest trading place in Shanghai, and the owner behind it is another low-level war god, Sima Yuan. Back then, after we found out the details of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion and the Wind Moon Pavilion, we entered the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion and the Wind Moon Pavilion, respectively, in order to find the location of the demonic tower as soon as possible. Jiang Jingyi said. Yen Wei sighed and said, "It's been hard on you." "I'm fine, but it's Qin Feiyang's mother who worked hard. In order to find the location of the demonic tower, she bowed to the demonic lord's minions all day long in the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Thinking back, when did she suffer such grievances?" Jiang Jingyi sighed deeply. "Don't worry, these days are coming to an end, because the young master has already taken action." Yen Wei sneered. Jiang Jingyi frowned and said, "Speaking of Qin Feiyang, I really want to ask, does he have the confidence to enter the demonic Dragon Island now?" Yen Wei smiled and said, "Don't worry about this. If he doesn't have full confidence, the young master won't take action. But, speaking of this, Yan Wei frowned again. But what? Jiang Jingyi said, the demonic lord only needs 3 days to merge with the divine body. We must send the location to the young master within 3 days. Otherwise, when the demonic lord recovers to his peak state, even the young master will have to pay the price. Yan Wei said worriedly. Jiang Jingyi nodded. But although you saved me now, my image crystal has been destroyed by Sima Kuan. How can I send the message to the young master? Yan Wei's face was full of worry. Jiang Jingyi pondered for a while and asked, are Qingzhu and Ling Yunfei with Qin Feiyang? Yan Wei was stunned and said, they already met at the miracle, but I really don't know if they are together now, because I came to Shanghai before the young master. Chapter 1811. Hearing this, Jiang Jingyi said, regardless of whether they are together or not, I can only send them a message now. After saying that, he took out the image crystal. Seeing this, Yan Wei was pleasantly surprised. You can contact them? Of course. We were all by old Master Qin's side before. What's more, Qingzhu is my daughter. There must be a contract bridge. Jiang Jingyi smiled. Yan Wei was taken aback, shook his head, and smiled bitterly. Look at my head. I forget everything when I'm anxious. That's reasonable. Jiang Jingyi smiled and activated the image crystal. But there's a problem that I can't figure out. Old Master Qin is mysterious. Does he not know the location of the demon pagoda? Yan Wei looked at Jiang Jingyi suspiciously. I can't say much. I can only tell you that there are some things that old Master Qin can't intervene in. We can only rely on ourselves. Jiang Jingyi said. Yan Wei nodded and asked, then when we were at the Wind Moon Pavilion, did you recognize me? Of course, because I already knew that the confidant of the imperial tutor was you. But at that time, I didn't expect that you would send a message to Qin Feiyang at the Wind Moon Pavilion. I also thought that since Sima Kuan personally sent you to the Wind Moon Pavilion, you must also know that the Wind Moon Pavilion is a divine artifact. So I didn't secretly remind you. But I can't deny that this matter was indeed due to my carelessness and almost caused you to encounter misfortune. Jiang Jingyi said, Brother Jiang, you don't have to blame yourself. On the contrary, I feel guilty that I forced you to kneel in front of me at the Wind Moon Pavilion. Yan Wei said, It's okay. After all, you don't know my identity. Moreover, I also intended to act out this play, because if I had told you my identity at that time, you might have given yourself away. At that time, if you were discovered by the artifact spirit, then both of us would be finished. Jiang Jingyi smiled. For the sake of the big picture, you didn't hesitate to let yourself be wronged. I admire Brother Jiang's character. Yan Wei sighed, his face full of admiration. Jiang Jingyi waved his hand and said, What I did was just a small matter, not worth mentioning. Yan Wei shook his head with a smile and said, I have another question. How did you sneak into the demonic Dragon Island and Modu? This. Jiang Jingyi pointed at the jade pendant on his chest. This is Hidden Soul Stone. Yan Wei was shocked. Yes, with this concealing Soul Stone, as long as one is careful, sneaking into demonic Dragon Island and demonic city will not be difficult. Furthermore, at that time, the demon city had yet to be taken away by the demon ancestor. It was located on the demon Dragon Island. The people here could enter and leave freely. Jiang Jingyi said, I see. Yan Wei nodded. Wang. In the blink of an eye, an illusionary figure suddenly appeared. It was Luo Qingzhu. Father. When Luo Qingzhu saw Jiang Jingyi, a trace of joy immediately crept onto her face. However, when she saw Yan Wei at the side, she was immediately stunned and then asked in surprise, Why are you here? Jiang Jingyi said, We'll talk about this later. Are you with Qin Feiyang? Yes, I'm in the ancient castle. Look, Ling Yunfei and the rest are also here. Moreover, we have also broken through to the pseudo-god realm. Luo Qingzhu said. Ling Yunfei and the rest also stood up and looked at Jiang Jingyi and Luo Qingzhu. All of you have broken through to the pseudo-god realm? It seems that all of you have gained a lot in this divine sight. However, the demon ancestors' foundation is quite terrifying. You must not let your guard down. Jiang Jingyi reminded and did not say anything else. Quickly ask Qin Feiyang to come here. We have something to say to him. At this very moment, Qin Feiyang had already left the Black Tortoise realm. Moreover, he had already told Tang Hai and Zhao Tailai about Yan Wei's situation. The two of them were also sad from the bottom of their hearts. Although they did not spend much time with Yan Wei, they had heard about Yan Wei's deeds from Fatso and the others. For Qin Feiyang, he had sacrificed his life. Such loyalty and courage made them feel ashamed of their inferiority. However, such a person had died just like that. How could they not be sad? However, they also knew that it had already happened. It was useless to be sad now. The most important thing now was to find the demon ancestor's location as soon as possible. Young master, since Yan Wei said, go east, then the demon ancestor's current location is most likely east of Demon Dragon Island. Why don't you go and look for him? As for the inner demons with Tang Hai and me and the Blood Kirin, there shouldn't be a problem. Zhao Tailai transmitted his voice. At the last moment, Yan Wei had said, go east. No, the inner demons have not formed a physical body yet. I can't be too far away from him. Otherwise, he will disappear. Moreover, going east might not necessarily be the east. It could be the southeast or the northeast. Although the general direction is the same, it is not that easy to find a space divine item. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Hearing this, Zhao Tailai fell silent and did not suggest anything else. At the same time, the inner demons had passed 35 heavenly tribulations. Their consciousness was getting weaker and weaker. Qin Feiyang was getting more and more worried. Feiyang, come to the castle. My father is looking for you. Suddenly, Luo Qingzhu's voice sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind without any warning. Huh, Jiang Jingyi? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He secretly told Tang Hai and the Blood Kirin and immediately entered the castle. When he entered the castle and saw Yan Wei, his face immediately revealed a look of ecstasy. This feeling was like going from hell to heaven in an instant. After coming back to his senses, Qin Feiyang quickly asked, why are you two together? It was Jiang Jingyi who saved me. Otherwise, I would have died in the hands of this person. Yan Wei grabbed the black-haired old man and looked at Qin Feiyang with a smile. Qin Feiyang looked at the black-haired old man, then looked at Yan Wei and said, your injuries, it doesn't matter. Now, let's make a long story short. Are you in the demon ancestor's original lair now? Yan Wei said, yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. That's good. Follow the southeast direction and search. About 200,000 miles, you will see a huge canyon. When you enter the canyon, you have to pay attention to the cliff on the left side of the canyon, because somewhere on the cliff there is a cave hidden, and the Space Divine item of Shanghai is now in that cave. But you have to be careful. According to Sima Kuan, the demon ancestor left a strand of killing intent in the cave. He was afraid that you would find it and wanted to kill you by surprise. Yan Wei said, sure enough, it's not in the east. Qin Feiyang murmured and nodded. I'll remember it. Yan Wei said again, in addition, Sima Yuan is lurking near you. The demon ancestor ordered him to wait for an opportunity to move. He's really hiding nearby. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with killing intent. Ling Yunfei looked at Qin Feiyang, then at Yan Wei and Jiang Jingyi. I've told you the location of the demon ancestor. Now, tell me, why are you together? Yes, father, why are you in Shanghai? Luo Qingzhu asked suspiciously. Jiang Jingyi smiled and looked at Luo Qingzhu. I was bored, so I came to Shanghai to take a look. Ah. Everyone was stunned. Yan Wei shook his head and smiled. It's like this. Jiang Jingyi's eyes flashed as he interrupted Yan Wei. Yan Wei, it's time for us to take action. Move? Yan Wei was stunned. Jiang Jingyi did not explain. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and smiled. Well, don't worry about us because we're safer than you. After that, he directly turned off the image crystal. Yan Wei looked at Jiang Jingyi suspiciously and said, Brother Jiang, what do you mean? I don't want them to know about our current situation, and I don't want Qin Feiyang to know that his mother is here. Jiang Jingyi sighed. Why? Yan Wei frowned. Jiang Jingyi said, Then you want to answer me. Who does Qin Feiyang care about the most in his life? Yan Wei said, Of course, it's his mother. That's right. If Qin Feiyang knows that his mother is in Shanghai, do you think he can still fight outside in peace? Jiang Jingyi said, I see. Brother Jiang is really thoughtful. Yan Wei said, It's not me who's thoughtful, it's Qin Feiyang's mother. She expected that Qin Feiyang would enter the demonic Dragon Island sooner or later, so she told me not to tell Qin Feiyang about her whereabouts. Jiang Jingyi said, Mistress, she's really a great mother. Yan Wei sighed. Yes. Jiang Jingyi nodded, then looked at the black-haired old man and said, I know, you won't tell us the location of the demonic tower easily. It's good that you know. The black-haired old man sneered. Jiang Jingyi smiled and said, Then you'd better be mentally prepared. What do you want? The black-haired old man was surprised. Jiang Jingyi said, I'd like to know if you can remain as calm as Yan Wei when faced with the fate of being skinned alive. After saying that, Jiang Jingyi looked at Yan Wei. Yan Wei chuckled, first took a healing pill, then took out a dagger, and walked toward the black-haired old man step by step. Before Yan Wei could get close, the black-haired old man was already scared out of his wits. At the same time, Qin Feiyang had also left the ancient castle and appeared beside the Blood Kirin and Zhao Tailai. At this time he was in a good mood. Young master, what's wrong? Zhao Tailai looked at him curiously. Yan Wei is not dead, and he has already told me the location of the demonic ancestor. Qin Feiyang laughed secretly. Really? The Blood Kirin and Zhao Tailai were both surprised. Yes. Qin Feiyang responded and said, Sima Yuan is nearby. Don't reveal anything. Sure enough, it's as I expected. This Sima Yuan will definitely not let the inner demons successfully pass the tribulation. The Blood Kirin thought. Then let's strike first and gain the upper hand. Qin Feiyang said. What do you mean? The Blood Kirin was surprised. As long as I can confirm that he is nearby, I can find him without anyone knowing, and kill him in one blow. Qin Feiyang said secretly, and his eyes were suffused with a wisp of dense killing intent. Zhao Tailai thought for a moment and said, Young master, if we can really kill him in one blow, I suggest that we don't kill him. We should subdue him and deal with the demonic ancestor with us. Indeed, with the help of a novice war god, we have a better chance of winning. Tang Hai chimed in. Chapter 1812. Subdue him. That's impossible. When the Blood Kirin heard their words, it sneered. Why? Tang Hai and the Blood Kirin looked at it suspiciously. Sima Yuan and Sima Kuan are brothers. Their parents died when they were young, and they lived on the streets. The Demon Alpha adopted them. You could say that the Demon Alpha is like a father to them. And the Demon Alpha trusts them very much. The Demon Alpha didn't even use the Blood Soul technique to control them. The Blood Kirin thought, What? The Demon Alpha is such a cautious person. He didn't use the Blood Soul technique to control them? Zhao Tailai and the Blood Kirin were shocked. That's right. You can imagine how much the demon Alpha trusts them. To be more specific, their relationship with the demon Alpha is like your relationship with Qin Feiyang. Maybe it's even stronger than your relationship with Qin Feiyang. The Blood Kirin said, if that's the case, then subduing him won't work. Zhao, Tai Lai sighed, feeling a little regretful. A forced melon is not sweet. If he follows me, I'll let him live. But if he doesn't, I won't be merciful. Qin Feiyang said secretly and entered the Black Tortoise realm. He controlled the Black Tortoise realm and started a carpet search with the inner demons as the center. Whoosh! 2 silhouettes flew up from the medicinal field below and landed beside Qin Feiyang. It was the Golden Leopard and Chui Li. Chui Li asked helplessly, Young master, when are you going to let me out? Don't worry, you'll be in the limelight one day. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, You guys help me look. Okay. The man and the beast nodded and looked up to scan the void. They didn't miss a single spot. What is Qin Feiyang doing? He disappears and then reappears. On the mountain peak, Sima Yuan looked at the place where the inner demons were undergoing the tribulation and frowned. Suddenly, he felt an inexplicable sense of uneasiness. This throbbing! Sima Yuan immediately retracted his gaze and scanned the surrounding void. His eyes were filled with bewilderment. Within the Black Tortoise world, Chui Li suddenly pointed at a certain spot on the screen and exclaimed, Young master, is that him? Qin Feiyang looked over and immediately saw Sima Yuan standing on the mountain peak. I've never seen Sima Yuan in person, but there can't be anyone else here. It should be him. Qin Feiyang said, Look at how he's looking around. Why do I feel that he seems to have noticed something? The Golden Leopard said with a frown, They definitely won't notice us. After all, this is the Black Tortoise world. Even divine sense can't detect it. Chui Li smiled. That's true. The Golden Leopard nodded. After a while, Sima Yuan stopped looking around and looked at the inner demons again. Young master, should we make a move too? Chui Li asked. Not for now. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and took out the divine phoenix blade. Divine power surged into the blade, and a terrifying sharpness roared out. In the meantime, controlling the Black Tortoise world, it stopped behind Sima Yuan. The Golden Leopard stared at Sima Yuan's back and laughed. Chui Li, do you think Sima Yuan can react? Do you still need to say that? Chui Li rolled his eyes at the Golden Leopard. Whoosh! Just as Chui Li's voice fell, Qin Feiyang suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, he appeared behind Chui Li and slashed out with his saber. However, in the face of such a fierce and unexpected attack, Sima Yuan's face did not show the slightest bit of panic. Instead, the corner of his mouth curled up into a mocking smile. Whoosh! His figure flashed, and in the next moment, Sima Yuan appeared a few miles away. On the contrary, Qin Feiyang was caught unprepared by this unforeseen event and froze in midair. How could it be? He actually failed? Could it be that Sima Yuan could detect the existence of the Black Tortoise world? Sima Yuan crossed his arms and looked at Qin Feiyang mockingly. Look at you! You seem very surprised. Qin Feiyang came back to his senses and raised his head to look at Sima Yuan. Actually, this seat is also quite surprised. You actually knew that I was hiding nearby, and even found me without making a sound. The Black Tortoise world is indeed extraordinary, Sima Yuan said. At that time in the Sea region, you failed to sneak an attack on me, so it's not hard to guess that you should be secretly spying on us. Qin Feiyang said. Smart. Sima Yuan looked at Qin Feiyang with admiration. Then do you want to know how this seat found you? If you are willing to tell me, I am willing to listen, Qin Feiyang said. Because of this, Sima Yuan said, a fiery red divine light shot out from his body, and a fist-sized heart appeared in the void. What is this? Qin Feiyang was surprised. This is this seat's battle soul, Sima Yuan said. What? It's actually a battle soul. Qin Feiyong was stunned. There were really all kinds of battle souls in this world. This seat named this battle soul sensing heart. It's a little embarrassing to say that this seat's battle soul is just like the all-seeing eye. It has no lethality at all. Sima Yuan said helplessly. So sour. Qin Feiyong looked at him in disdain. Usually, a battle soul like this that had no lethality would have a heaven-defying ability. I can't believe that I am despised by you. Sima Yuan shook his head and smiled bitterly, but in the next moment his expression became incomparably arrogant. Although this seat's battle soul has no lethality, it has an ability that others don't have, and that is the ability to sense danger. Sense danger? Qin Feiyong frowned. Yes. As long as someone comes close to me and wants to kill me, then no matter where that person is hiding, this seat's battle soul will be able to sense it, and it will give me a hint at the first moment. Sima Yuan said. Qin Feiyong frowned. So, before I made a move, you already knew that I was going to sneak an attack on you? There's no one else here besides you, and coincidentally you disappeared. If it wasn't you, who could it be? Sima Yuan laughed. Amazing. Although there is a gap between you and a god of war like the Eye of Heaven, as long as you use it well, you can be invincible. Qin Feiyong said. Invincible is a bit exaggerated, but whoever wants to sneak an attack on me will never be able to do so. Sima Yuan laughed, his eyes full of mockery towards Qin Feiyong. Obviously, he was mocking Qin Feiyong's previous sneak attack, calling it stupid and ignorant. Qin Feiyong had seen all kinds of people, so how could he not see it? But he didn't take it to heart. He just smiled faintly and said, I heard from the Blood Kirin that you and the Demon Alpha are like father and son. So what? Sima Yuan asked. Qin Feiyong sighed and said, I really feel sorry for you. A peerless powerhouse like you should be respected, but now when I look at you I only feel hatred. It's just reputation. It doesn't matter. Sima Yuan said lightly. The Demon Alpha did raise you, but you shouldn't have chosen to be the enemy of the world, and you shouldn't have helped the evildoers. Qin Feiyong sighed. Sima Yuan said, Are you saying that I should go and save the world? Shouldn't that be the case? Qin Feiyong asked. Save the world. Sima Yuan murmured. Sima Yuan muttered while his gaze suddenly became ferocious to the extreme, and he seemed like a violent wild beast as he roared. I'm going to save all the living beings in the world, so who'll save me? So much resentment. Qin Feiyong's heart skipped a beat. Do you know what kind of life I went through? Actually, when I was young, my family was quite well off. Although there were no powerhouses at home, at least I didn't have to worry about food and clothing, and I had servants to serve me. But suddenly one day, an enemy came to my door and my mother and I were killed. At that time I was 8 years old and my brother was 6. We hid in the cellar and witnessed the scene with our own eyes. Do you know what it was like for 2 children to watch their parents die in front of their eyes? But then we were lucky. The enemy didn't find me and my brother, and we escaped the disaster. But what we didn't expect was that the damned butler and those lowly servants actually took away our family property after the enemy left, and didn't even leave us a single gold coin. That housekeeper even forcibly occupied our home, and those who used to have a good relationship with my parents also turned hostile, and looked at us as if they were looking at trash. Desperate, my brother and I began to wander the streets from then on, without food or clothes. In the cold winter, we 2 brothers curled up in a corner of an alley, hugging each other to keep warm. When we were hungry, we would go to the garbage to look for food. There was even one time when my brother almost froze to death in the snow. Do you know how cruel it was for 2 children? But at that time, no one extended a helping hand to us. Instead, they treated us like dogs. When they were in a good mood, they would give us some charity. When they were in a bad mood, they would beat and scold us. I really had enough. Living was more painful than dying. I might as well die. So I took my brother and climbed to the top of a mountain and prepared to jump off the cliff to commit suicide. But at that moment, Lord Demon Ancestor appeared. When Sima Yuan said that, his expression softened. Clearly, he had deep feelings for the Demon Ancestor. Sigh. Qin Feiyang let out a long sigh. He really didn't expect that this person would have such a painful memory. Lord Demon Ancestor saved us and asked us if we wanted to become stronger. Did we want revenge? Our brothers didn't even hesitate. We told him that we wanted to. From then on, we followed Lord Demon Ancestor. He taught us how to cultivate and taught us how to kill. It was with him that we found our dignity as human beings. Later on, our brothers became stronger. We found our enemies and killed everyone. Even their families and children were not spared. That was the first time our brothers went on a killing spree. That feeling made our blood boil. In the end, we returned to our hometown and killed the butler, as well as the servants and those who had humiliated us. Looking at the corpses on the ground, my brother and I didn't feel guilty. Instead, we felt a sense of satisfaction that we had never felt before. It was only then that we finally understood that in this world, whoever's fist is harder is the truth. Then we followed Lord Demon Ancestor until today. It can be said that without Lord Demon Ancestor, there wouldn't be us. You say that I'm helping the evildoer, but I feel that I'm enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. Lord Demon Ancestor is my heavens. Whoever dares to make an enemy of Lord Demon Ancestor, I'll kill them. Sima Yuan grinned as he stared at Qin Feiyang. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Qin Feiyang was silent for a long time. He sighed deeply and said, "To be honest, I really don't want to fight with you because I can understand how you feel. However, I have to kill Lord Demon Ancestor. I don't need your sympathy. Since you want to kill Lord Demon Ancestor, I'll kill you. It's that simple." Sima Yuan smiled. Chapter 1813. Kill me? I'm afraid you don't have that ability yet. Qin Feiyang's gaze turned cold as his long hair fluttered in the wind. A monstrous, divine aura emerged like a torrent as it pounced towards Sima Yuan. Boom! Sima Yuan also released his divine aura. The two divine auras collided crazily. The ground beneath their feet and the surrounding void immediately began to collapse. Your current strength has shocked me greatly. Perhaps I really am no match for you, but the person lying here in the end will definitely be you. Sima Yuan's aura was like a rainbow and his gaze was like a torch. Clang! As he waved his hand, the battle sword on his back rushed out. The sword light was boundless and its sharpness could topple mountains and overturn seas. This was his supreme grade divine artifact, Dragon Vein Sword. The sword was about 1 meter long and 3 fingers wide. The sword body was curved in a small arc, and the hilt was engraved with a demonic dragon pattern. The entire Dragon Vein Sword was dark and emitted a cold aura. The Dragon Vein Sword has the power to destroy everything. Since I used the Dragon Vein Sword at the beginning of the battle, it is enough to show my respect for you. Sima Yuan grabbed the Dragon Vein Sword and slashed in the air. The sword light immediately turned into a huge wave and rushed towards Qin Feiyang. Since that's the case, I will also directly use 1/3 of my strength to show my respect for you. Qin Feiyang said. The purple gold divine dragon appeared and roared in the sky. A sound wave that was filled with destructive power surged out like an invisible dragon and pounced towards the sword light. Boom! Clang! A series of loud sounds suddenly resounded. The two continued to exchange blows in the void and were constantly defeated. The intense fluctuations from the battle transformed into terrifying waves of wind that swept out in all directions. The void was annihilated and the earth sank. It was like the scene of the end of the world, shocking the world. The divine dragon technique is only 1/3 of his strength? Sima, Yuan murmured. One had to know. Qin Feiyang's divine dragon technique was no longer a high-grade divine technique, but a perfect one. Its terrifying power was completely comparable to a supreme-grade divine artifact. However, even such a powerful divine technique was only 1/3 of this person's strength. Sima Yuan was very curious. What other tricks was this kid hiding? Boom! In the end, the sound wave and the sword light shattered each other in the void. Don't underestimate me. Show me your full strength. Sima Yuan shouted, and his divine power surged into the dragon vein sword. A sword shadow appeared in the sky, and its terrifying sharpness was unparalleled. Qin Feiyang raised his head to look at Jianing and snorted coldly, "If you have the ability, I won't be stingy." Finished speaking. The purple gold divine dragon floating above his head instantly shattered the sky and pounced towards the sword shadow. Arrogant! Sima Yuan was enraged, and his sword shadow instantly attacked. Boom! At this moment, heaven and earth trembled. The purple gold divine dragon instantly shattered and disintegrated. Qin Feiyang immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and stepped back uncontrollably. Crack! But at the same time, the sword shadow also shattered. Sima Yuan's face was also pale as blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. "What's going on with your cultivation?" "Zhuge Xinyan told me that you've already broken through to the initial stage of the War God realm. But why are you only at the initial stage of the War God realm?" Sima Yuan looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. "Since you know me so well, then you should also know about the soaring dragon art. After I broke through to the War God realm, the soaring dragon art, which was originally a battle art, allowed me to evolve into a divine art." Qin Feiyang said, "So that's how it is. Your talent is indeed amazing. To be honest, I really can't bear to kill you. Unfortunately, you are Lord Demon Ancestor's enemy. All enemies must die." Sima Yuan's arm shook, and the dragon vein sword in his hand let out a sharp hiss. Following that, he disappeared from Qin Feiyang's line of sight. A strong sense of danger welled up in his heart. "Teleportation?" Qin Feiyang muttered as he scanned the void. Shwa! Almost in the next moment, Sima Yuan appeared behind Qin Feiyang and mercilessly slashed at Qin Feiyang's head. However, at the same time, Qin Feiyang took a step forward and instantly disappeared in front of Sima Yuan. Moreover, he was even faster than Sima Yuan. In less than half a blink of an eye, he appeared behind Sima Yuan, raised his Phoenix Divine Blade, and slashed at Sima Yuan's back. That sharp blade immediately left a deep wound on Sima Yuan's back, so deep that his bones could be seen. Sima Yuan was shocked. This speed was too terrifying, wasn't it? It was much faster than a true small success stage were godlike him. The Blood Kirin's failure was not without reason. However, I am not someone that the Blood Kirin can compare to. It will betray Lord, but I will never. Even if I die here, I will have no regrets. Sima Yuan suddenly turned around and grabbed the blade of the Phoenix Divine Blade with his bare hands. Flesh and blood were cut open and blood flowed out. However, his expression did not change as he stared at Qin Feiyang and sneered, "My madness and methods will make you feel fear and despair." Finished. The dragon vein sword flashed like lightning and headed straight for Qin Feiyang's heart. Qin Feiyang's eyes were calm. Sima Yuan grabbing the Phoenix Divine Blade with his bare hands was indeed crazy. But to make him afraid and despair? It was still far from it. Comparing craziness, who could be crazier than him? Thinking back to the past, what crazy things had he not done? In terms of methods, he did not lose to anyone. Seeing that the dragon vein sword was about to pierce his heart, Qin Feiyang raised his arm like lightning and slapped the dragon vein sword's body. The terrifying force caused Sima Yuan's arm to go numb. The dragon vein sword immediately flew out of his hand and flew into the distance. However, Even if Qin Feiyang slapped the sword body and not the sword blade, the sharpness of the top-grade divine artifact almost tore his arm apart. Purple gold dragon blood splattered across the sky, but for this, Qin Feiyang ignored it and raised his right foot. The divine power surged from the tip of his foot as he kicked Sima Yuan's lower abdomen. "Ayo!" Sima Yuan immediately let out a howl like a pig being slaughtered. His entire body was like a meteorite as he flew out horizontally, and that blood-stained face was filled with shock. He thought that he was crazy enough. However, he didn't expect that Qin Feiyang was even crazier than him. The Phoenix Divine Blade was not a top-grade divine artifact. With his cultivation of a small success war god, grabbing the Phoenix Divine Blade with his bare hands was actually not a big deal. But the Dragon Vein Sword was a true top-grade divine artifact. But this kid actually dared to use his hands to clash head-on with the Dragon Vein Sword. How could this young man be so terrifying? However, Qin Feiyang's expression did not change in the slightest. He consumed a healing pill, held the Phoenix Divine Blade, and used the walk formula to catch up to Sima Yuan in an instant. Taking advantage of the fact that Sima Yuan had not regained his senses, he mercilessly slashed out with his blade. Feeling that terrifying sharpness, Sima Yuan quivered and did not even stabilize his body. In an instant, he used it to escape into the air. Crack! A thigh fell out of the void. Fresh blood dyed the sky. In the next moment, Sima Yuan appeared a few miles away. His face was pale, and his right leg had disappeared. Obviously, the thigh from before was Sima Yuan's right leg. Qin Feiyang looked at Sima Yuan from afar and said indifferently, "Are you worthy of saying crazy in front of me?" Sima Yuan was silent. The Dragon Vein Sword broke through the air and floated in front of him. It gently swayed the sword body as if it was comforting him. "Thank you." Sima Yuan took a deep breath, raised his head to look at the Dragon Vein Sword, and a smile appeared on his face. A very sincere smile. This kind of smile might only appear when facing the demon ancestor, the Dragon Vein Sword, and Sima Kuin. Next, Sima Yuan grabbed the Dragon Vein Sword, consumed a regeneration pill, and raised his head to look at Qin Feiyang. "Originally, I wanted to use my methods to intimidate you, but I didn't expect that I would be intimidated by your methods instead." "Is it strange?" Qin Feiyang asked. "It's not strange. After all, you are Qin Feiyang." However, the real battle has only just begun. Boom! Sima Yuan's momentum erupted, and he appeared in front of Qin Feiyang in just a blink of an eye. God force billowed out from his body as he slammed his palm into the void, attacking Qin Feiyang. The two immediately began to fight in the void. Whoosh! Teleportation continued to appear. Their figures could not be seen at all, and only the sound of the Dragon Vein Sword and the Dragon God technique colliding could be heard, as well as the blood of the gods. "Young master, can you do it?" In the distance, Zhao Tailai looked a little worried. "Don't worry. Sima Yuan's strength is about the same as mine. Even when I used all my skills, I was not a match for Qin Feiyang. He is no exception. What's more, Qin Feiyang still has the Qilin armor. Instead of worrying about him, why don't we think about how to help the inner demons?" The blood Qilin looked at the inner demons that were shrouded by the heavenly tribulation, and his eyes were filled with awe. This was awe for the heavenly might. Under the heavenly might, everything was an ant. When Zhao Tailai heard this, he asked suspiciously, "Can he help with the heavenly tribulation?" "Of course. Didn't I already say that when Emperor Hong's inner demons underwent the heavenly tribulation, Qin Yuan secretly helped? However, it requires a lot of strength. Even the few of us are not enough," the blood Qilin said, and there was a deep sense of powerlessness in his words. "Qin Yuan," Zhao Tailai muttered to himself and transmitted his voice. "Tang Hai, do you think Qin Yuan is powerful? Could he be watching us in the dark right now?" Tang Hai's heart skipped a beat as he scanned the surrounding void. Zhao Tailai was speechless. What are you looking for? Even if he is here, we can't find him. Then let's wait and see. Tang Hai thought to himself. Boom! Clang! On the other side, the battle between Qin Feiyang and Sima Yuan had reached its climax. However, Qin Feiyang had always held the upper hand in the battle, because when their strength was on par, speed would determine the outcome. After stepping into the war god realm, the Dao character formula was faster than teleportation, and after continuous exchanges, he slowly understood Sima Yuan's strength. He was confident, as long as there were no accidents, he would win. Crack! Accompanied by a loud noise, another heavenly tribulation blasted toward the inner demons. The inner demon's consciousness was shattered again. The heavenly tribulation was merciless. Wisps of consciousness were crazily destroyed. Looks like I can't continue fighting with this person. Qin Feiyang glanced at the inner demons worriedly. If he didn't think of a way quickly, the inner demons would definitely be doomed. Sima Yuan noticed a change in Qin Feiyang's expression and frowned slightly. Then he turned to look at the inner demons and was immediately furious. He shouted at Qin Feiyang, "How dare you be distracted when fighting with me? Unforgivable. Please remember the domain name of this book. Literature Museum Mobile Version website." Chapter 1814. Clang! The furious Sima Yuan stepped forward, raising the dragon vein sword and slashing at Qin Feiyang. "Since you're in such a hurry to die, I'll fulfill your wish." Qin Feiyang's eyes were filled with killing intent. While teleporting, he used the walk word technique and appeared behind Sima Yuan. Sima Yuan didn't even think about it. The dragon vein sword turned in the air and slashed at Qin Feiyang. So fast! Qin Feiyang was surprised. One must know that he was not only teleporting, but also using the walk word technique. Logically speaking, Sima Yuan shouldn't have been able to react. Facing the dragon vein sword, he didn't use the divine phoenix blade to fight head-on. Instead, he chose to give Sima Yuan a fatal blow from the side. Swish! He once again used teleportation and the walk word technique and appeared beside Sima Yuan in an instant. However, Sima Yuan seemed to have predicted his next move. The dragon vein sword was one step ahead of him. In other words, he crashed into the dragon vein sword. Puff! The tip of the sword pierced his heart. Purple gold, dragon blood, suddenly spurted out. That terrifying sharpness was aiming straight for his heart. In the nick of time, Qin Feiyang took a step back. The tip of the dragon vein sword left his heart and a blood arrow spurted out. Very surprised, right? Sima Yuan looked at Qin Feiyang. The dragon vein sword in his hand had drops of blood dripping from the tip of the sword. What's going on? Qin Feiyang frowned. Slowly experience it yourself. Sima Yuan laughed and once again launched a fierce attack on Qin Feiyang. The following situation was exactly the same as before. No matter how fast Qin Feiyang's speed was, Sima Yuan could always predict his next move in advance and counterattack in advance. Not long later, Qin Feiyang had more than a dozen swords on his body and was bleeding all over. How is this possible? Tang Hai and Zhao Tailai noticed Qin Feiyang's situation, and their faces were full of disbelief. Young master was actually suppressed? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? The two of them rubbed their eyes in disbelief and looked at Qin Feiyang again. Their hearts were suddenly filled with shock. He wasn't seeing things. It was indeed Sima Yuan who was suppressing the young master. Blood Kirin, what is going on? Why is Sima Yuan able to foresee young masters? Next move in advance. Zhao Tailai looked at the Blood Kirin. The Blood Kirin and Sima Yuan used to work together, so they knew why. This is because of Sima Yuan's fighting soul. His war god is not only capable of sensing potential dangers, it also possesses another heaven-defying ability. The Blood Kirin looked at Qin Feiyang and Sima Yuan. What ability? Zhao Tailai frowned. Predict the opponent's attack. For example, although Qin Feiyang's speed is faster than Sima Yuan's, his fighting soul can easily predict what Qin Feiyang will do next. That's why Qin Feiyang was suppressed. The Blood Qilin said, "Isn't this equivalent to foreseeing the future?" Zhao Tailai was bewildered. Foreseeing the future is too exaggerated, but it is undeniable that his ability is terrifying. Unless you have overwhelming strength or a speed that even his fighting soul cannot predict, he will be nibbled away sooner or later. The Blood Kirin said, "Nibbled away." Zhao Tailai raised his eyebrows. Predicting the opponent's attack and injuring him bit by bit until he is finally killed. Isn't that nibbling away? The Blood Kirin said. When Zhao Tailai heard this, he quickly shouted, "Young master, it is his fighting soul that is causing trouble. His fighting soul can predict your next move. You must be careful." "I see," Qin Feiyang mumbled. "So what if I know? Can you be so fast that even my fighting soul cannot predict your next move?" Sima Yuan sneered. Qin Feiyang said, "This is already my top speed." "If this is your top speed, then you will never be able to break through my fighting soul's ability." Sima Yuan sneered and struck Qin Feiyang with his sword, leaving a ghastly wound on his body. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and looked at the wound. He shook his head and smiled. Zhuge Mingyang's fighting soul can be said to be heaven-defying. Your fighting soul is also heaven-defying. None of the demon ancestors' subordinates are weak. "It's good that you know," Sima Yuan said. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Didn't the imperial tutor tell you not to activate your fighting soul in front of me?" Sima Yuan was stunned. He suddenly thought of something and said, "Could it be the Emperor Prison's ability to strip away one's consciousness and another gifted superpower, the Eye of Heaven?" Roar! Qin Feiyang did not say a word. The purple gold dragon soul roared out. Sima Yuan's eyes narrowed and he quickly retreated without hesitation. This was because when Qin Feiyang had activated the purple gold dragon soul, his fighting soul had predicted that Qin Feiyang would activate the Emperor Prison again. If it was any other attack, he would counterattack in advance. However, he could only avoid the Emperor Prison. This was because the Emperor Prison's current ability was to imprison one's body and strip away one's consciousness. As long as he was enveloped by the Emperor Prison, regardless of whether he had predicted it or not, he would not be able to avoid the fate of being imprisoned and stripped of his consciousness. Therefore, he could only escape and leave the range of the Emperor Prison. Aren't you very conceited? Why don't you try the new ability of the Emperor Prison? Qin Feiyang mocked. Do you think I'm stupid? Although I'm curious about the ability to strip away one's consciousness, I'm not stupid enough to risk my life. Sima Yuan sneered. Smart. If you didn't dodge, you would have become a corpse now. But it doesn't matter, because my speed is faster than yours. Qin Feiyang smiled. Divine light surged under his feet, and he flew toward Sima Yuan like lightning. Sima Yuan stared at Qin Feiyang without moving. Indeed, Qin Feiyang was faster than him. No matter how he escaped, he would be caught up sooner or later. Therefore, instead of doing something that would lose his dignity and be meaningless, he might as well face it head-on. Boom! Suddenly, he moved. The dragon vein sword shone brightly. He took the initiative to rush into the Emperor Prison. Immediately, he was imprisoned in the void, and his mind went blank. Qin Feiyang naturally would not let go of the opportunity. The divine phoenix blade was fully recovered. Accompanied by an ear-piercing phoenix cry, a huge fire phoenix roared and pounced toward Sima Yuan. The fire phoenix roared in front of Sima Yuan, and Sima Yuan finally regained his consciousness. However, it was obviously too late to dodge or counterattack. Even his fighting soul could not predict what would happen. At that moment, the fire phoenix crashed into Sima Yuan's body. Sima Yuan spurted out blood, and his skin was lacerated. His bones were clearly visible. However, this attack did not end Sima Yuan's life, but only seriously injured him. Qin Feiyang did not take advantage of the victory to pursue. Looking up at the purple gold dragon soul, he shouted, "Eye of heaven, open!" In the sky, the forehead of the purple gold dragon soul suddenly split open. Purple, gold divine light illuminated the world. Very soon, a third eye appeared. An invisible mysterious force immediately pounced towards Sima Yuan. In the next moment, a heart also appeared in front of Qin Feiyang. It was Sima Yuan's fighting soul, the heart of induction. "This is real!" Sima Yuan looked at the heart of induction, then looked up at the eye of heaven in the forehead of the purple gold dragon soul. He wiped the blood off his face, his eyes full of shock. Regarding the eye of heaven, the imperial tutor had indeed told him, but he had never believed it, because this kind of fighting soul was too rare. Moreover, the purple gold dragon soul already had the Emperor prison. How could it activate another innate ability? However, he did not expect it to be true. At this moment, his heart could not calm down. How could there be such a monstrous person in this world? Let me try. How powerful is the ability of the heart of induction? Qin Feiyang muttered as the heart of induction entered his body. Immediately, he felt that everything around him seemed to have become somewhat different from before. It was very quiet, very ethereal. It was as if at this moment he was the only one standing between heaven and earth. Moreover, his body and mind also had an inexplicable sublimation. Whether it was his perception or his reaction ability, it seemed to be stronger than before. Swish! Suddenly, Qin Feiyang used the walk word technique and rushed towards Sima Yuan. Sima Yuan roared and actually forcefully broke free from the shackles of the Emperor prison. Holding the dragon vein sword, he slashed towards Qin Feiyang. Just as Sima Yuan broke free from the shackles of the Emperor prison, Qin Feiyang's heart suddenly throbbed. Following closely, he seemed to have seen the future. He could clearly see what Sima Yuan was going to do and what methods he was going to use. Is this the ability of the heart of induction? It is indeed heaven-defying. Only after experiencing this ability, personally, did he know how terrifying it was. It was no exaggeration to say that with this ability, he could be in an invincible position. Let me enjoy this feeling. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth lifted. Instead of retreating, he moved forward. With a thought, the divine dragon seal flew out and blasted towards the dragon vein sword. Boom! Clang! The collision of the divine technique and the divine artifact caused the world to rumble. At this moment, both of them could predict each other's next move. For a moment, the two of them were evenly matched, and neither had the upper hand. However, whether it was Zhao Tailai, the Blood Qilin, or Sima Yuan himself, they all knew that the winner of this battle would definitely be Qin Feiyang. Because they could predict each other's next move, Qin Feiyang, who had an absolute advantage in speed, would be even more powerful. At this moment, the inner demons also ushered in the 50th tribulation. Half of his consciousness had already been obliterated by the tribulation. However, there was an unyielding look in his eyes. No matter how terrifying the tribulation was, he was determined to condense a physical body. In the sky above a certain mountain, a man and a beast were suspended in the void. It was Qin Yuan and the snow python. In the void in front of them, there were two images. One was the image of the inner demons transcending the tribulation. The other image showed the battle between Qin Feiyang and Sima Yuan. I didn't expect that kid to become so strong after a trip to the divine site. The snow python looked at Qin Feiyang, who was fighting with Sima Yuan, in disbelief. Yes, no one in the world can match the speed of his growth. It won't be long before he catches up with us. Qin Yuan chuckled, his old face full of admiration and gratification. Chapter 1815. Catch up with us! The snow python lowered its head and muttered to itself. There was a touch of melancholy on its face. Qin Yuan looked at the snow python and sighed. Are you still brooding over your cultivation? Guardian, what a joke. Only you would foolishly run over here to become a guardian. The snow python looked at Qin Yuan mockingly. If I didn't become a guardian, the Qin clan would have been destroyed by the demon ancestor. Although the price of becoming a guardian isn't small, it's worth it. Qin Yuan smiled. That's a reasonable thing to say. The snow python sneered and said, But do you really not regret it? The choice was made by myself. Why should I regret it? Take it easy and let nature take its course. Qin Yuan said. Let nature take its course? Humph! Don't make it sound so nice. After a while, I can guarantee that you'll be like me. The snow python snorted and looked at the image in the sky again. Maybe, Qin Yuan murmured. The snow python glared at Qin Yuan and shouted, Don't talk anymore. Hearing your tone makes me angry. Qin Yuan chuckled. The snow python glared at him and looked at the inner demons. Don't you want to help him? With his ability, it's impossible for him to survive the 99 heavenly tribulations. You want me to help him? Qin Yuan asked with a smile. No. The snow python smiled. That's right. If you want to interfere with me, you might as well not do anything. Whether he can survive the heavenly tribulations will depend on his luck. Qin Yuan smiled faintly. Demon Dragon Island. The heavenly tribulations continued to fall, not giving the inner demons a chance to breathe. On the other side, Sima Yuan was also completely suppressed by Qin Feiyang. The battle between the two had reached a critical point. At the same time, Demon City, inside the Space Divine item, the black-haired old man was lying on the ground like a pile of mud. Most of the flesh on his chest had disappeared and blood was flowing. Naturally, Yan Wei had sliced off the flesh and blood that had disappeared with a saber. I really didn't expect you to be so stubborn. You're obviously scared to death, but you've persisted until now. But why do you have to do this? If I tell you, not only will I be spared from physical pain, I will also be able to save my life. Isn't that great? Jiang Jingyi stood aside and smiled at the black-haired elder. You've already tortured me to this extent, and you still want me to speak? How naive, how laughable. The black-haired old man's face was filled with mockery. All right, let's see how long you can last. Jiang Jingyi smiled and turned to Yan Wei, saying, Brother Yan, give him a hard time. Yan Wei's injuries were more or less healed, and he had also regained his true appearance. Hearing Jiang Jingyi's words, he grinned, grabbed the dagger, and walked to the black-haired old man's head. The black-haired old man looked at him with disdain. Being skinned alive isn't that scary, but I wonder if you've ever tasted the feeling of having your head forcibly pried open and your brain dug out. Yan Wei said. Hearing this, the black-haired old man could not help but feel his scalp go numb. I've never tried it before. Since there's such a good opportunity today, I might as well give it a try. Yan Wei grinned and grabbed the black-haired old man's hair, and the dagger in his hand was about to fall. Wait, wait, wait! The black-haired old man hurriedly shouted. Yan Wei and Jiang Jingyi looked at each other, and a smile crept onto their faces. They thought that he was tough, but it turned out that he was just SOSO. The black-haired old man asked, If I tell you, will you really let me go? Jiang Jingyi said, As long as you don't play any tricks, we'll let you go. Words are not proof. The black-haired old man said in a deep voice. Jiang Jingyi said, I swear in the name of my son, if I lie to you, my son will die without a burial place. Yan Wei was stunned, and he looked up at Jiang Jingyi. If he remembered correctly, this person did not seem to have a son. Jiang Jingyi chuckled and looked at the black-haired old man. In this world, no one dares to swear in their own son. You should believe me now. The black-haired old man sized Jiang Jingyi up for a moment and said, All right, I'll tell you. The demonic pagoda is in a valley in front. Valley? Jiang Jingyi was stunned and said, How far is it? Not far. At most half an hour's journey. The black-haired old man said, Half an hour's journey. Jiang Jingyi frowned, pondered for a moment, and said, These few years, I've searched almost everywhere outside the city. Since it's so close, why didn't I find it before? Because the demonic pagoda is under the valley, and it's fused with the hidden soul stone. The black-haired old man said, I see. Jiang Jingyi nodded in realization, and then said, The specific location and location. Southwest. That valley is also very easy to find, because there's a huge lake beside the valley. As for the entrance of the demonic pagoda, after entering the valley, find a rock with a sword mark on the left cliff. Then press on the rock, and the entrance will automatically open. The black-haired old man said, It's so secretive. Jiang Jingyi murmured, then looked at the black-haired old man and said with a smile, Thank you very much. No need to thank me. Let me go immediately. The black-haired old man said coldly. There was a hint of murderous intent in the depths of his eyes. So what if you know the entrance? When I'm free, I'll immediately report this to Lord Sima Cohen. By then, none of you will be able to escape. That was what he thought in his heart. However, Jiang Jingyi did not let him go. Yan Wei also slowly got up and put away his dagger. His face was full of mockery. You! Seeing this, the black-haired old man felt a strong sense of uneasiness. Jiang Jingyi raised his arm and pointed his index finger at the black-haired old man's forehead, and wisps of false god force appeared on his fingertip. Bastard, you lied to me? The black-haired old man roared. Yes, I lied to you. Jiang Jingyi nodded. The black-haired old man shouted in panic. Aren't you afraid that the oath will come true? No, because I don't have a son. Jiang Jingyi grinned. Hearing this, the black-haired old man's blood-stained face turned green and red. What was the most unreliable thing in the world? Wasn't it these absurd oaths? How could he believe this person's words? How foolish! Remember to be smarter in your next life. Jiang Jingyi smiled, and the false god force flew out and entered the black-haired old man's forehead. The black-haired old man's head exploded like a watermelon. Yan Wei looked at this scene without any sympathy in his eyes. Not only this person, but all the demon ancestors' underlings should be killed. Yan Wei retracted his gaze and looked at Jiang Jingyi, asking, What do we do next? Jiang Jingyi said, I'll disguise myself as this person and send you to the demon tower. What about the matriarch? Should we inform her first? Yan Wei said. Jiang Jingyi pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, Let's hide it from her for now, because we don't know what will happen after entering the demon tower. All right, so that she won't worry. Yan Wei nodded. Demon Dragon Island. At this moment, Sima Yuan's heart was on the verge of collapse, because no matter what he did, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't turn the situation around. Qin Feiyang became more and more courageous as he fought, and he was getting more and more miserable. After so many years, he had never felt such a sense of defeat. His strength was already strong enough. He had the cultivation of a low-level war god. He had a heaven-defying battle soul, and a supreme-grade divine artifact, Dragon Vein Sword. However, before Qin Feiyang, all of this was useless. It was simply useless. What should he do? Was he really going to die here today? Death, he wasn't afraid, but he couldn't bear to part with the man who was like a father, and he was even more willing to part with his younger brother, who had always been with him. Your heart is in chaos, and the outcome of this battle is already decided. Qin Feiyang's blade slashed toward Sima Yuan's left shoulder. Crack! His arm was immediately broken. Sima Yuan endured the pain and retreated. Looking at Qin Feiyang, who was standing in the opposite void, a sense of despair rose in his heart. Was this the strength of this child? Just 1/3 of his strength was already so terrifying. If he exerted all of his strength, how strong would he be? Would Lord Demon Ancestor and his younger brother be his opponent? At this moment, he couldn't help but start to doubt. Perhaps this child's strength might have already surpassed Lord Demon Ancestor. When Lord Demon Ancestor fought with him, wouldn't Lord Demon Ancestor also die? No, Lord Demon Ancestor must not die. His Excellency is my second parent, and we brothers owe him a great debt of gratitude. No matter what, I have to protect him. That's right. No matter what, I can't let this child fight with Lord Demon Ancestor, and I can't let the inner demons successfully pass the tribulation. Thinking of this, Sima Yuan laughed loudly. Qin Feiyong frowned. Qin Feiyong, you are the most terrifying young man I have ever seen in my life. I really admire you. I even have an impulse to sit face to face with you, drink, and talk about life. Unfortunately, you and I are in different positions. It will never be realized. Although it is a pity, it is also an unchangeable fact. Since it can't be changed, then let me end all of this. For Lord Demon Ancestor, I am willing to sacrifice everything. Today you must die here. At first, Sima Yuan was smiling and sighing with emotion, but when he reached the last sentence, his tone suddenly changed and was filled with a shocking sharpness. And in his expression, there was a hint of ruthlessness and madness. Seeing this, Qin Feiyong immediately realized that something was wrong, because in the past he had seen countless of such eyes, and without exception, those who had such eyes all self-destructed in the end. In other words, Sima Yuan was going to self-destruct and perish together with him. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Qin Feiyong angrily roared as he used the teleportation technique to rush towards Sima Yuan like lightning. In the past, when so many people self-destructed, his heart did not waver at all. But now, seeing Sima Yuan self-destruct, he was incomparably angry and heartbroken. A person like Lord Demon Ancestor was not worthy of anyone dying for him. Whether it is worth it or not, I know. Sima Yuan whispered as a destructive aura rushed out of his body, causing the world to tremble. In the distance, the Blood Qilin, Zhao Tailai, and Tang Hai also changed their expressions. Genius remembered the address of this site in a second. Mobile version of reading website. M. Chapter 1816. The self-destruction of a false god was already shocking enough, not to mention a war god, a lesser-level war god. If Sima Yuan successfully self-destructed, not to mention them, even the inner demons wouldn't be able to survive. He had to stop Sima Yuan. This isn't loyalty, it's blind loyalty. Qin Feiyong shouted angrily. Whether it's loyalty or blind loyalty, as long as I have a clear conscience, it's fine. Don't try to persuade me anymore. It's meaningless. Think about how to escape and save your companions and the inner demons. Sima Yuan retreated while looking at Qin Feiyong. That destructive aura became more and more terrifying. He retreated because Qin Feiyong's speed was too fast. If he stood there and didn't move, Qin Feiyong would definitely be able to rush over in time to stop him from self-destructing. Shua! Qin Feiyong stopped when he heard this. He also understood the reason why Sima Yuan retreated. He also knew that Sima Yuan was determined to self-destruct. He wasn't afraid of Sima Yuan's self-destruction, because he could enter the castle or the Black Tortoise realm at any time. However, he couldn't sit back and do nothing about Zhao Tailai and the others. However, it was too late to turn back and save them. What's wrong? You've already given up? You can enter the Black Tortoise realm and the castle. Why must you stay outside? For the blood, Kirin? For the inner demons? For friends? Now, I want to ask you, is it worth it for you to do this? Sima Yuan said. As you said, whether it's worth it or not, I know. Qin Feiyang smiled. I see. It seems that our personalities are quite compatible. With you as my companion, I'm very satisfied. Sima Yuan also smiled. No, I won't die and you won't self-destruct. Qin Feiyang shook his head. So confident? Sima Yuan was stunned and laughed. Then let me see. What methods do you have to stop me from self-destructing? Finished. With a flick of his hand, he threw out the dragon-veined sword and shouted, Quickly return to Lord's side! Blood Kirin quickly seized the dragon-veined sword. Zhao Tailai's spirits lifted as he shouted. Are you kidding me? The Blood Kirin shouted angrily. If he wanted to snatch the dragon-veined sword, he had to go through Sima Yuan. Wasn't that just courting death? Believe in young master. If he says he won't let Sima Yuan self-destruct, then Sima Yuan definitely won't succeed in self-destructing. Zhao Tailai said anxiously. If he was strong enough, why would he need the Blood Kirin? He had already caught up with them. The Blood Kirin was shocked. His lips twitched, and he said, Do you trust Qin Feiyang that much? Zhao Tailai nodded. Lunatic! What a bunch of lunatics! The Blood Kirin roared and teleported toward the dragon tattoo sword. The way he saw it, it was simply impossible for Qin Feiyang to stop Sima Yuan from self-detonating. But there was no other way. After all, its life was in the hands of Qin Feiyang. In the blink of an eye, seeing the Blood Kirin fearlessly chase after the dragon-veined sword, Sima Yuan's brow furrowed. He shouted, You will all go to hell with me! Boom! The destructive aura suddenly soared to an even more terrifying level. It was at this moment. Qin Feiyang raised his arm and waved it gently. With a gentle wave, a blood-red flash appeared. It tore through the sky at an extremely shocking speed and disappeared into Sima Yuan's qi. Blood immediately splattered into the sky. Immediately after, Sima Yuan screamed in pain as a fist-sized bloody hole appeared on his lower abdomen, penetrating from the front to the back. The destructive aura also dissipated. The Blood Kirin's eyes widened as he looked at Sima Yuan in disbelief and continued to chase after the dragon-veined sword. But in his heart he was extremely shocked. He had actually stopped Sima Yuan's self-detonation. But what had happened before that? That blood-red flash was too fast, like a flash in the pan. Not to mention the Blood Kirin, who was focused on the dragon-veined sword. Even Sima Yuan, who was facing Qin Feiyang, did not notice what it was. He only saw the flash of light, and his qi was destroyed. With his qi destroyed, his cultivation disappeared instantly. Sima Yuan also fell to the ground powerlessly. Like the Blood Kirin, his heart was filled with disbelief. What was going on? What exactly was that scarlet streak of light? Bang! Amidst the endless doubts, Sima Yuan fell to the ground with a loud bang. Although his cultivation was destroyed, he still had a divine body. The moment he fell, the ground within a radius of hundreds of miles suddenly sank, forming a huge crater. And Sima Yuan did not die. He lay in the deep crater and looked at Qin Feiyang in the sky. He could not help but smile bitterly. Was this kid's strength already so strong? Even he, a low-level war god, could not self-detonate if he wanted to? Lord Demon Ancestor, I'm sorry. I'm incompetent. At the same time, in the distance, Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai looked at each other and could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Although they believed that Qin Feiyang could definitely stop Sima Yuan, they were more or less nervous in the face of a low-level wargod's self-detonation. But now the crisis was finally over. Zhao Tailai said, Old Tang, the Blood Kirin should not be able to subdue the dragon-veined sword by itself. Quickly go and help. Okay. Tang Hai nodded and chased after the Blood Kirin. Tang Hai, you stay here and watch Sima Yuan. I'll go and help. Qin Feiyang's voice suddenly sounded. Tang Hai was slightly surprised. He rushed to Qin Feiyang's side and frowned. Why don't you just kill them? Qin Feiyong smiled. He teleported and used the Dao word art to chase after the Blood Kirin and the Dragon Vein sword. Soon, he saw the Blood Kirin and the Dragon Vein sword. The sword and the beast were fighting in the void. The Blood Kirin had even activated its true divine body. Even so, it was powerless against the supreme-grade divine artifact, the Dragon Vein sword. Seeing Qin Feiyong rush over, the Blood Kirin's spirit was lifted. It shouted, "Why aren't you surrendering? Do you want to be destroyed by Qin Feiyong?" The Dragon Vein sword trembled, and a wave of fear came from it. Qin Feiyong's strength had not only shocked Sima Yuan and the Blood Kirin, but also the Dragon Vein sword. Shua! Qin Feiyong rushed in front of the Blood Kirin. He looked at the Dragon Vein sword and said, "I don't want to talk nonsense. Surrender or be destroyed. Choose." Facing Qin Feiyong, who was so close, the Dragon Vein sword panicked even more. The Blood Kirin shouted, "The Kirin armor has surrendered. If you don't surrender, only death awaits you." Every supreme-grade divine artifact was very precious. To be honest, if Qin Feiyong really destroyed the Dragon Vein sword, it would be a bit reluctant. The Dragon Vein sword buzzed and trembled as if it was struggling. After a while, it released a wave of helpless emotions. Then it flew in front of Qin Feiyong and bowed. "At least you know what's good for you." Qin Feiyong released his divine will and entered the Dragon Vein sword. He quickly found the blood contract. The Blood Kirin said, "The owner of the Dragon Vein sword is Sima Yuan, not the Demon Alpha." Qin Feiyong was surprised. Whether it was the Sky Demon flag or the Kirin armor, their owner was the Demon Alpha. But the owner of the Dragon Vein sword was actually Sima Yuan. It seemed that the Demon Alpha's trust in this person was indeed extraordinary. However, the owner of the Dragon Vein sword was Sima Yuan, so erasing the blood contract inside was not as difficult as erasing the Kirin armor, because Sima Yuan's cultivation had been crippled. The most important thing was that even if he erased the Dragon Vein sword's blood contract, it would not alarm the Demon Alpha. Divine power poured into the Dragon Vein sword and easily erased the blood contract. Next, he quickly cut his finger and dripped blood to recognize it as his master. This way, he would obtain another supreme-grade divine artifact. Puff! At the bottom of the pit, when Qin Feiyong erased the Dragon Vein sword's blood contract, Sima Yuan spat out another mouthful of blood. His blood-stained face was filled with grief, because it was obvious that the Dragon Vein sword had fallen into Qin Feiyong's hands. Sima Yuan looked at Tang Hai, who was standing at the side without moving or saying a word, and said, "You are the Hall Master of the Nether Hall, Tang Hai?" Tang Hai looked at him and nodded. "You didn't follow the wrong person. Qin Feiyong will definitely become the ruler of this continent in the future. And you will also follow him and be respected by the world and enjoy supreme glory." Sima Yuan said with a smile, a trace of envy in his eyes. Although he had followed the Demon Alpha and obtained great strength and unparalleled status, in the eyes of the world, there was only disgust and hatred for him. But Qin Feiyong was different. Qin Feiyong stood above benevolence and righteousness, the embodiment of benevolence and righteousness. In the near future, people would definitely worship him like a god. This was the difference. You don't have to envy us. As long as you turn back now and follow the young master to suppress the Demon Alpha, you will also be respected in the future. Tang Hai said coldly, "You are also a war god, so you should understand that sometimes once you take the first step, you will never be able to turn back." Sima Yuan shook his head and smiled. He looked at Tang Hai and said, "Can I ask you for a favor?" "Speak." Tang Hai said, "Tell Qin Feiyong that if possible, give my brother, Sima Kuin, a way out. In this world, I only have him as my family, and I don't want him to be like me. Please." Sima Yuan said sincerely. Tang Hai frowned and said, Are these your last words? Sima Yuan got up and smiled at Tang Hai, saying, Give me the dagger in your hand. Tang Hai said, I won't give it to you, because the young master hasn't said that he wants you to die. You are his subordinate, so you should understand his character. The reason why he didn't kill me just now is because he wants me to submit. But I can't submit. Even if he doesn't kill me, I will continue to find opportunities to perish together with him. I think, as the person he trusts the most, you don't want me to become a threat to him. Sima Yuan said. Tang Hai was silent. Sima Yuan smiled. Give it to me. Death is the best ending for me. Tang Hai took a deep breath and handed the dagger over. Thank you. Sima Yuan smiled gratefully and looked at the ground with nostalgia. Without hesitation, he grabbed the dagger and slashed his neck. Blood gushed out. Then, Sima Yuan slowly fell down, and his life fluctuations quickly dissipated. Tang Hai waved his hand, and the dagger fell into his hand. He looked at Sima Yuan's face and murmured, You are a respectable opponent. Then he retracted his gaze and turned to look at the inner demons. Chapter 1817. Whoosh! After a while, Qin Feiyang and the blood Kirin arrived. When they saw Sima Yuan lying in a pool of blood, Qin Feiyang immediately looked at Tang Hai and asked, What happened? He committed suicide. Tang Hai said. Suicide? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked at the dagger in Tang Hai's hand and then at the wound on Sima Yuan's neck. He could not help but sigh. Tang Hai said, Did you not suspect that I killed him and only said that he committed suicide? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at Tang Hai and waved his hand. The soil under his feet churned and quickly swallowed Sima Yuan's body. Then, he used teleportation and landed next to Zhao Tailai. He looked up at the inner demons. Tang Hai and the blood Kirin followed closely behind. Zhao Tailai asked, Young master, did you subdue the dragon vein sword? Of course. Qin Feiyang smiled. That's great. Not only did you get the Kirin armor, but you also got the dragon vein sword. Your strength has skyrocketed. Zhao Tailai said excitedly. Qin Feiyang said, Although you have 2 more supreme-grade artifacts, they're not very useful against the Demon Lord. That's right. The Demon Lord has a heaven-defying artifact. No matter how many supreme-grade artifacts there are, they are just scrap metal. The Blood Kirin said. Hearing the Blood Kirin's words, Zhao Tailai's joy disappeared. The Blood Kirin rolled its eyes and went on to say, But using a top-class weapon to deal with others should be no problem. You just want the young master to return the Kirin armor to you. You're still beating around the bush. Aren't you being hypocritical? Zhao Tailai rolled his eyes. The Blood Kirin laughed and glanced at Qin Feiyang. However, it found that Qin Feiyang did not seem to hear it. He did not even look at it. It could not help but feel discouraged. Boom! Another heavenly tribulation descended. The inner demons were already a candle in the wind. The situation was worrying. Qin Feiyang said, Which tribulation is this? 79th. Zhao Tailai said, There are still 20 heavenly tribulations left, Qin Feiyang murmured. He clasped his hands together and murmured, You must survive, please. Tang Hai suddenly withdrew his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang, saying, Before Sima Yuan committed suicide, he asked me to tell you that if possible, spare his younger brother, Sima Kuan. Let Sima Kuan go. Qin Feiyang mumbled and shook his head. Impossible. If not for Jiang Jingyi, Yan Wei might have already died at Sima Kuan's hands. As for the rest, he could choose to forgive. But if he dared to harm Yan Wei, then he must be killed. Tang Hai was not surprised by this answer at all. This was because when the Imperial Preceptor cut Yan Wei alive, Sima Yuan and the Imperial Preceptor's fate had already been decided. Zhao Tailai suddenly looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, Young master, Do you think Jiang Jingyi and Yan Wei will take the opportunity to rescue the mermaid princess and Lin Yi in Magic City? Lin Yi, Mermaid Palace Master. Hearing Zhao Tailai's words, the Blood Kirin's gaze suddenly trembled slightly. However, Qin Feiyang and the other two did not notice this abnormality. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said, "To be honest, I don't want them to do this because it is too dangerous. Of course, if there is a chance, it would be best to rescue them." Zhao Tailai nodded. "Hey, Qin Feiyang." Just when Qin Feiyang and Zhao Tailai looked at the inner demons again, the Blood Kirin's voice suddenly sounded. Moreover, it had a deep tone. Qin Feiyang was taken aback. He retracted his gaze and looked at the Blood Kirin suspiciously. "How much do you know about Lin Yi and Mermaid Princess?" The Blood Kirin pondered for a while and asked, "Of course, I know about them. Why do you suddenly ask?" Qin Feiyang was puzzled. "Do you really know about them?" The Blood Kirin murmured. "Do you know why the demon Alpha likes them?" Qin Feiyang said, "Because they are the most important people around me. The demon Alpha wants to use them to threaten me. This is just one of the reasons." The Blood Kirin said, "There are other reasons." Qin Feiyang was surprised. "It seems that you don't actually know about these two women." The Blood Kirin sighed. "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang frowned. The Blood Kirin glanced at him and said in a deep voice, "The reason why the demon Alpha likes them is because of their war souls." When mentioning Lin Yi and Mermaid Princess war souls, the Blood Kirin's eyes were filled with deep awe. It seemed to be very afraid. War souls? Qin Feiyang was stunned. The memory that had been sealed for a long time slowly emerged. He really didn't know much about Lin Yi's war soul, but he had some impression of Mermaid Princess war soul. It seemed to be a vague golden figure, similar to the first Mermaid Emperor. Wait, I was wrong. To be exact, the Demon Alpha is interested in their war soul's gifted powers. The Blood Kirin said. Gifted powers? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai were also curious. What kind of gifted powers made the Blood Kirin so afraid and the Demon Alpha so interested? The Blood Kirin said, "Their gifted powers are on the same level as all-seeing eye. Eye of nothingness and eye of heaven." This, Qin Feiyang and the other two looked at each other. It is on the same level as all-seeing eye. This is too surprising. Blood Kirin, don't keep us in suspense. Tell us quickly. Zhao Tailai urged. Lin Yi's war soul is Oblivion Eye. The Mermaid Palace Master's war soul is Eye of Life. The Blood Kirin said word by word. Oblivion Eye, Eye of Life. The three looked at each other. You guys really don't know anything. The Blood Kirin shook his head and then slowly said, at the same time, Magic City, in a valley. Two figures looked around as if they were looking for something. That's right. The two were Jiang Jingyi and Yan Wei. Jiang Jingyi had already disguised himself as the black-haired old man. Whether it was his words, actions, aura, or temperament, they were almost exactly the same. All of a sudden, Yan Wei pointed at a rock wall and whispered, "Brother Jiang, look, isn't that a sword mark?" Jiang Jingyi looked in the direction that Yan Wei pointed and saw a few inconspicuous marks on the rock. The two walked closer to take a look. Those were the sword marks left by a sharp sword. Jiang Jingyi raised his arm, placed it on the sword mark, and pressed slightly. Kacha! Cracks immediately appeared on the rock that was originally a single entity. Seeing that there was hope, Jiang Jingyi pressed harder. He pressed on the rock and immediately sank deeper. Crack! At that moment, with a faint sound, the ground in the middle of the valley slowly cracked open. Jiang Jingyi and Yan Wei looked at each other and quickly ran over. Under the cracked ground, they saw an ancient stone staircase. The stone staircase was dark and was more than 2 meters wide. It was at a 45-degree angle and slanted downward. Without a doubt, this was the entrance to the demon tower. Jiang Jingyi looked at the stone staircase and turned to Yan Wei. He smiled and said, "Brother Yan, I'll have to trouble you." Yan Wei said, "I'm not even afraid of being skinned alive. Why would I be afraid of trouble? Come at me." Jiang Jingyi immediately slapped Yan Wei's chest. Yan Wei immediately spat out blood, and his face turned pale. Immediately after, Jiang Jingyi grabbed Yan Wei and rushed into the entrance. Under the stone staircase was a dark passage. There was no light at all, and it was extremely dim. But whether it was Jiang Jingyi or Yan Wei, their cultivation was not weak now. Even without light, they could see everything clearly. Phew! Jiang Jingyi looked up at the depths of the passage and let out a long breath. Then he stepped forward and walked into the depths of the passage. The passage was like a giant python, winding and winding, leading to the depths of the earth. About 10 breaths later, the two of them went deep into the ground. Finally, a glimmer of light appeared in front of them. Jiang Jingyi looked down at Yan Wei and said, "If you see Emperor Chen and the others later, don't be impulsive." "I know," Yan Wei said secretly. Jiang Jingyi sped up. Soon, he came to the exit of the passage. A huge underground square came into sight. The square was about 10,000 feet wide. The ground was inlaid with black stones as flat as a mirror, and in the middle of the square stood a tall stone tower. The stone tower had 9 floors. It was as black as ink, as if a demon beast was lurking there, emitting a chilling aura. "That's the demon tower?" Jiang Jingyi muttered in his heart and walked toward the stone tower. Suddenly, a strong sense of danger came from behind. His body stiffened, and he slowly turned his head to take a look. He saw an old man with fiery red clothes standing behind him without him noticing. Seeing the old man, Jiang Jingyi's eyes trembled. He quickly turned to face the old man and bowed. "Greetings, Lord Yan." So he's Lord Yan. Yan Wei also took the opportunity to look at the old man. Not only was the old man in a red robe, but his hair was also red. His old face looked extremely cold, giving people a great sense of danger. Lord Yan was silent. He looked at Jiang Jingyi and Yan Wei and suddenly released his aura. This aura was so strong that it almost made the two of them despair. It was a war god. "What are you doing here? Don't you know that this is the forbidden area of Shanghai?" Lord Yan stared at Jiang Jingyi and said. Jiang Jingyi trembled and quickly said, "Lord, please forgive me. It was Lord Sima Kuan who asked me to come." "Sima Kuan?" Lord Yan raised his eyebrows and his cold expression softened. He said, "Why did Sima Kuan ask you to come?" Jiang Jingyi waved his hand and threw Yan Wei to the ground. He said, "This man is Qin Feiyang's accomplice. He followed Zhuge Xingfeng into Shanghai not long ago and was caught by Lord Sima Kuan. Then Lord Sima Kuan asked me to bring him to the Demon Tower and hand him over to Lord Yan." "Qin Feiyang's accomplice?" The Flame King looked at Yan Wei in surprise and said, "Are you sure you didn't make a mistake? He's just a war god. How could Qin Feiyang let him infiltrate Shanghai? So what if he's a war god? Although an ant is small, there will be a time when it can defeat an elephant." Yan Wei snorted. Lord Yan was stunned. "Lord Yan, don't underestimate him. Although he's weak, he's very stubborn. Back then in the Wind Moon Pavilion, when we captured him, Zhuge Xinyan used the punishment of cutting him alive. But guess what? Throughout the whole process, he didn't even move his eyebrows." Jiang Jingyi said, "Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website, M. Chapter 1818. Really? The Flame King was surprised. The taste of being skinned alive was not just a little scary, but there was actually someone who could withstand it? Absolutely. Jiang Jingyi nodded. Not bad. The Flame King looked at Yan Wei and nodded approvingly. Yan Wei sneered, "If you have any tricks, just come at me." "Don't worry, I won't do anything to you, but in the end, you will definitely suffer a fate worse than death." The Flame King smiled and looked at Jiang Jingyi, waving his hand. "All right, I'll take him. You can go now." "Yes." Jiang Jingyi replied respectfully and turned to enter the secret passage, leaving without looking back. However, after leaving the Flame King's sight, he immediately took out the jade pendant made of hidden soul stone and wore it around his neck. Then he went back the way he came and hid at the exit, secretly spying on the Flame King and Yan Wei. "What's your name?" "In the square." The Flame King looked down at Yan Wei and asked. Yan Wei got up, straightened his back, and looked at the Flame King proudly. "I'm Yan Wei." "Master," the Flame King muttered to himself and suddenly laughed. "I didn't expect a trash like you to be so arrogant, but don't worry, soon you will be lying in front of me like a dog." "In your dreams," Yan Wei sneered. "Let's wait and see." The Flame King smirked and grabbed Yan Wei's neck, then dragged Yan Wei towards the demon pagoda. "What kind of tricks does this person have?" "In the dark." Jiang Jingyi frowned. Although he already knew about this person's existence in the Wind Moon Pavilion and knew what he looked like, he knew nothing about this person's tricks. So now, looking at the Flame King's confident look, he couldn't help but worry about Yan Wei. He also regretted letting Yan Wei take the risk. While Jiang Jingyi was upset, the Flame King dragged Yan Wei and walked to the gate of the demon pagoda. The gate was tightly shut. King Yan waved his hand, and the door slowly opened. Jiang Jingyi's eyes flashed. He immediately entered the spatial divine object, took off the jade pendant, and placed it on the ground of the spatial divine object. As long as this soul concealment stone was placed on the ground, it could be used to isolate the search of divine sense. Immediately after, Jiang Jingyi waved his hand, and an image appeared in the void in front of him. The Flame King dragged Yan Wei into the demon pagoda. Seeing the scene, Jiang Jingyi hurriedly controlled the spatial divine object and silently streaked across the sky, flashing into the devil pagoda. As soon as he entered the tower, a long and narrow corridor appeared on the screen. On both sides of the corridor, there was a stone door every 5 or 6 meters. Jiang Jingyi looked at the stone doors and frowned slightly. Were there prison cells behind these stone doors? He knew nothing about the Devil Pagoda. However, what was certain was that Qin Feiyang's grandfathers were definitely behind one of the stone doors. In the corridor, the Flame King dragged Yan Wei all the way to the end. There was also a stone door here. Rumble. The Flame King waved his hand, and the stone door slowly opened. Looking at the inside of the stone door, whether it was Yan Wei or Jiang Jingyi who was hiding in the spatial divine item, they were all extremely shocked. They originally thought that there would be prison cells behind the stone door. However, they didn't expect that it would be a cultivation room. After the Flame King entered the cultivation room, he threw Yan Wei on the ground and raised his head to look at the center of the cultivation room. The cultivation room wasn't big. It was about 300 feet in size. In the center of the cultivation room, there was an ancient futon. On the futon, a woman in white was sitting cross-legged. The woman was about 20 years old. She had an excellent figure. She was extremely beautiful. Her hair was like a waterfall. Her skin was like ice and her bones were like jade. She was like a fairy. However, this woman looked extremely cold, as if she was an emotionless person. How could it be her? When Yan Wei got up and raised his head to look at the woman, his body suddenly froze. In the spatial divine object, Jiang Jingyi looked at the woman in white in the image, and he couldn't believe it. Looking at your reaction, I can confirm that you are really Qin Feiyang's man. The Flame King looked down at Yan Wei and said jokingly. He then turned to look at the woman in white and cupped his fist. Greetings, Missy. There was a hint of respect for the woman in white in his expression. The The woman in white nodded indifferently, then glanced at Yen Wei and asked, "Who is he?" The Flame King smiled and said, replying to Miss, "He is Qin Feiyang's accomplice. His name is Yen Wei. Qin Feiyang's accomplice is our enemy. You can just kill him. Why did you send him to me?" The woman in white frowned and was puzzled. Enemy? Yen Wei couldn't help it anymore. He yelled, "Linny, what's wrong with you? Although you haven't seen me and don't know me, you know the young master. You and the young master are childhood sweethearts. How can you say that you are an enemy?" "That's right. The woman in front of me is Lin Yi." Yen Wei had never seen Lin Yi, but when he was with Qin Feiyang and others, he saw Lin Yi's image. Although Lin Yi was more mature than before over the years, her appearance did not change much, so he could recognize her at a glance. Childhood sweethearts? But hearing Yen Wei's words, Lin Yi's face was full of disdain. She said coldly, "How can I be childhood sweethearts with Master's enemy? What the hell is going on?" Looking at Lin Yi's indifferent eyes full of hatred for Qin Feiyang, Yen Wei looked at the Flame King in confusion and said angrily, "It's a surprise, right? As I said just now, I will make you suffer a fate worse than death." The Flame King sneered. Yen Wei glanced at the Flame King, then looked at Lin Yi and asked, "You really don't know Qin Feiyang? Don't you remember that when you were in Iron Bull Town?" "Shut up! I'll say it again. I have nothing to do with Qin Feiyang except hatred." Before Yen Wei finished speaking, Lin Yi spoke coldly. "Hatred?" Yen Wei was suspicious. "Why is there hatred?" The Flame King joked, "Because Missy's parents, brothers, and friends were all killed by Qin Feiyang." "Nonsense! Nonsense!" Yen Wei was furious. Jiang Jingyi, who was in the spatial divine item, was furious. This was completely groundless. Yen Wei said anxiously, "Don't listen to the demon ancestor's nonsense." "Young master, clang." Without waiting for Yen Wei to finish speaking, Lin Yi's eyes turned cold, and a 3-foot thin sword appeared. She grabbed the thin sword and placed it on Yen Wei's neck. Yen Wei couldn't help but feel his scalp tingling. Her eyes were full of murderous intent. Without a doubt, if he dared to say another word, Lin Yi would definitely kill him mercilessly. However, why is this? Does Lin Yi really hate Qin Feiyang? Or is there another reason? Wait, did Lin Yi lose her memory? Yen Wei's eyes trembled slightly, staring at Lin Yi. His face was full of surprise. "In fact, you and I both understand the relationship between Lin Yi and Qin Feiyang. But now, Lin Yi doesn't remember anything." The Flame King's voice suddenly sounded in Yen Wei's mind. "She really lost her memory?" Yen Wei was taken aback. "Yes, she has forgotten all her previous memories. Now, she only knows that she is the disciple of the demon ancestor." The Flame King transmitted his voice. Yen Wei said angrily, "Are you the one who erased her memory?" "No, she erased her past memories by herself." The Flame King secretly said. "Impossible," Yen Wei said flatly. "Back then, the demon ancestor deceived her to come to Magic City and gave her a divine art. This divine art is called Art of Indifference. It has the ability to defy the heavens." The Flame King secretly said. "Art of Indifference?" Yen Wei frowned. "Yes, Art of Indifference can make a person's talent skyrocket. Didn't you notice? Lin Yi now has the cultivation base of a pseudo-god." The Flame King transmitted his voice. "Pseudo-god?" Yen Wei looked up at Lin Yi, and his body trembled suddenly. Sure enough, the aura that Lin Yi exuded now was that of a pseudo-god. Although Art of Indifference can defy the heavens, it also has a terrible side effect. That is, those who cultivate Art of Indifference will gradually forget everything in the past as their cultivation base improves. The Flame King secretly said. It turns out to be like this, Yan Wei murmured. And Lin Yi lost all her memories when she broke through to the peak of 9-star combat Emperor realm. At that time, we told her that Qin Feiyang killed her family. It was the demon ancestor who saved her, accepted her as a disciple, and taught her cultivation. So now, in her heart, there is only hatred for Qin Feiyang. The Flame King secretly laughed. Damn it, damn it. Yan Wei was furious and roared. You can't even let a woman go. You bastards are really despicable. Ha ha, the Flame King laughed and transmitted his voice. No one forced her at the beginning. She chose Art of Indifference by herself. How can you say that we are despicable? What a joke. If you didn't deceive her and lure her to Magic City, would she cultivate Art of Indifference without any precaution? Yan Wei said angrily. Now that you mention it, it does make sense, but it has already happened. What can you do? Wake her up? It will never be possible. Now, she is the biggest weapon in our hands. Of course, her weapon is used to deal with you. The Flame King laughed, but he was also transmitting his voice. After all, Lin Yi was right next to him. Although she had lost her past memories, her mind was fine. So he definitely couldn't let her hear these words. As for Yan Wei, the Flame King didn't care at all, because Lin Yi wouldn't believe what Yan Wei said at all. This is a scam. Wake up, I beg you. Yan Wei looked at Lin Yi and shouted. Clang! Sure enough, as the Flame King expected, Lin Yi not only didn't believe it, but she also wanted to kill him. The thin sword that was pressed against Yan Wei's neck moved slightly, and a line of blood immediately appeared. Seeing this, the Flame King suddenly broke out in cold sweat and shouted, Miss Yi, you can't kill him now. Why? Lin Yi asked. The Flame King said, Sima Kuin, ask someone to send him here. Obviously, he wants to use him to deal with Qin Feiyang. You mean with the Eyes of Indifference? Lin Yi asked. Yes. The Flame King nodded. Lin Yi glanced at Yan Wei, then put away the thin sword. The Flame King wiped his cold sweat. Although Lin Yi was just a pawn, her position in the heart of the demon ancestor was higher than him, the god of war. Her status was even on par with Sima Kuin and Sima Yuan. So for Lin Yi, he didn't dare to offend her at all. Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version reading website. Chapter 1819. Eyes of Oblivion. Yan Wei listened to the conversation between the two, and his eyes were full of surprise. Eyes of Oblivion is Ms. Yi's battle soul. King Yan looked at Yan Wei with a smile and said, he did not transmit his voice. What kind of battle soul? Yan Wei asked. The Eyes of Oblivion is the same as the Art of Oblivion. It makes people forget everything. King Yan said, Forget everything. Yan Wei was shocked. Yes, but there are differences between the two. The Art of Oblivion will only make the cultivator lose their memory bit by bit. But Ms. Yi's Eyes of Oblivion forcibly deprives others of their memory in an instant, and anyone who is deprived of their memory will listen to Ms. Yi's words. This is the Eyes of Oblivion. King Yan smiled. What? There is such a terrifying battle soul in the world. Yan Wei was shocked. Jiang Jingyi's face turned pale when he heard King Yan's words in the space artifact. He really didn't expect Lin Yi to awaken such a terrifying battle soul. For Lin Yi, neither Jiang Jingyi nor Qin Yuan paid much attention to her. Therefore, this was the first time they heard of it. Wait, Yan Wei suddenly asked. Why haven't I heard the young master and the state preceptor mention this? Your young master doesn't know about this at all. Even in the entire spiritual state at that time, except for the mermaid princess who had a good relationship with Lin Yi, no one knew about it. Because since the Eyes of Oblivion was awakened, Linny has never shown this battle soul in front of others because she also knows that this battle soul is quite terrifying. If it is spread out, it may cause a fatal disaster or attract some people with bad intentions. As for the state preceptor, of course, we also intended to hide it. After all, this is not a trivial matter. King Yen secretly said, "These words naturally couldn't be heard by Linny." Yen Wei frowned and said, "Since she is in the spiritual state and has never awakened the eyes of oblivion, how did you know?" We didn't know at first either. At first, we only went to Linny and the mermaid princess to deal with Qin Feiyang. But later, under our surveillance, we accidentally overheard her conversation with the mermaid princess. When we heard about their battle soul's innate divine powers, we were also quite shocked. Then we changed our plans, using their thirst for power to lure them to demonic Dragon Island. The plan was also very successful. In the end, they all became our people. The Flame King transmitted his voice. The thirst for power, Yen Wei mumbled. There was no doubt about it. Whether it was Lin Yi or the mermaid princess, the reason why they desired strength was Qin Feiyang. They wanted to stay by Qin Feiyang's side and help Qin Feiyang. However, the fiend ancestor used this point of theirs to trick and manipulate them. Why was the human heart so sinister? Suddenly, Yen Wei realized another key point and frowned. Wait, what battle soul did the mermaid princess activate? Your young master has seen her battle soul, but your young master knows nothing about her battle soul's innate divine powers. Her innate divine powers is called the Eye of Life. Once the Eye of Life is activated, it can provide a steady stream of vitality to her companions. And it's not targeted at a single person, but at a wide range. In other words, even if there are thousands of people, the Eye of Life can provide vitality at the same time. Even if the Sea of Qi is destroyed, it can be repaired instantly with the help of the Eye of Life. It's no exaggeration to say that as long as the mermaid princess is around, her companions have an immortal body. Tell me, isn't this innate divine powers terrifying? The Flame King secretly smiled proudly. Yen Wei was dumbfounded. He didn't expect that both Lin Yi and the mermaid princess had activated such terrifying innate divine powers. The Eye of Oblivion, the Eye of Life, these are simply heaven-defying existences. It's quite fun to talk about it. These two golden mountains originally belonged to your young master. No one can take them away. But what's the result? Your young master doesn't know how lucky he is. He wants to leave them in the spiritual state and doesn't care about them. Now he wants to benefit us. Don't you think it's ridiculous? The Flame King secretly said, his words full of sarcasm. It's not that the young master doesn't care about them. He just doesn't want them to take risks with him. Don't say that the young master doesn't know their innate divine powers. Even if he knows, the young master will do the same. An inhumane beast like you will never understand the young master's good intentions. Yen Wei said sternly. Ha ha! The Flame King laughed and said sarcastically, "Don't find excuses for his stupidity. In this world, only smart people can stand at the highest place and overlook the common people." Really? Then let's wait and see. Let's see who will have the last laugh. Will it be your demon ancestor or my young master? Yen Wei sneered again and again. Okay, let's wait and see. The Flame King's eyebrows were full of disdain. He turned to look at Lin Yi and said, "Missy, erase his memory." Wait, what about the mermaid princess? Did she also cultivate the art of indifference? Yen Wei hurriedly said, "She didn't, but her memory has been deprived by Miss Yi." The Flame King said, "What do you mean? Does it mean that after the memory is deprived by the Eye of Oblivion, the memory will disappear forever?" Yen Wei was surprised. No, no, no. Lin Yi can return their memory to them. Or kill Lin Yi, and their memory will be restored. But do you think Lin Yi will return their memory to them now? Then there is only one way left. Kill Lin Yi, but with our protection, can you kill her? But the two did not know. Yan Wei and Jiang Jingyi did not leave. They were in the cultivation room at this moment. Inside the space divine item, Yan Wei glared at Jiang Jingyi and said, "Brother Jiang, what are you doing? What if your whereabouts are exposed? Don't worry, with the hidden soul stone they can't find us. But you are too impulsive. You actually self-destructed. Have you ever thought that your self-destruction can't kill Lin Yi at all? After all, she now has the cultivation of a pseudo-god." Jiang Jingyi said, "How can I not know? But what can I do? Do I just watch the demon ancestor use her to deal with the young master? You also know the young master's character. He definitely can't kill Lin Yi, so I might as well take the risk." Yan Wei sighed. Jiang Jingyi couldn't help but be absent-minded when he heard it. What kind of charm does Qin Feiyang have? He actually made this person so loyal that he even sacrificed his life? Have you ever thought that if Lin Yi really died under your self-destruction, Qin Feiyang might blame you? Jiang Jingyi asked calmly. "I thought about it, but it doesn't matter," Yan Wei said. "What a loyal and iron-blooded man." Jiang Jingyi sighed secretly. Yan Wei looked at Lin Yi in the picture, and murderous intent flashed in his eyes. He said, "Now that the Flame King is not here, it is a good opportunity. Send me out quickly. I have said that your self-destruction can't kill her. Why are you so stubborn? I also advise you to give up this idea as soon as possible because I can't do this. I want to keep you as a talent for Qin Feiyang." Jiang Jingyi snorted coldly. If such a loyal person were to sacrifice himself here, wouldn't it be a pity? Then what do you say? Yan Wei looked at him angrily. Chapter 1820. I say, "Old Yan, why do you only want to flaunt your might? Didn't you notice that there is someone stronger than you standing in front of you?" Jiang Jingyi said angrily. "In front of me?" Yan Wei was taken aback for a moment and glanced around. "There's no one else here except me and Jiang Jingyi." "Wait, are you talking about yourself?" Suddenly Yan Wei frowned and looked at Jiang Jingyi. "Yes, I am also a pseudo-god. My chances of killing Lin Yi are higher than yours." Jiang Jingyi looked at him helplessly. "No, no, 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 no." Yan Wei shook his head quickly. "Why not? Are you looking down on me?" Jiang Jingyi was displeased. "No, no. You are one of the most respected elders of the young master. How can I let you take the risk? Moreover, Demon Ancestor likes Lin Yi so much. He must have left some life-saving means for her. Maybe Demon Ancestor's murderous intent is lurking in Lin Yi's body. It is even possible that the thin sword that Lin Yi took out before is a superb artifact. In other words, if you go out now, it is likely to be a dead end." Yan Wei said in a deep voice. "It turns out that you know it too. I thought you didn't know." Jiang Jingyi rolled his eyes at him. Ugh, Yan Wei was stunned. "I don't really want to go out and kill Lin Yi. I just want you to stand from a bystander's point of view and see the current situation clearly." Jiang Jingyi sighed. "It turns out to be like this." Yan Wei suddenly realized and then smiled bitterly. This was the so-called the onlooker sees the game more clearly than the player involved. When he wanted to self-destruct before, he didn't think about these problems at all. But when he heard Jiang Jingyi say that he wanted to go out and kill Lin Yi, his mind became clear. All the possibilities were instantly thought of. Although you were a little confused just now, it also reflects that you are a person who can do anything for others. A person like you is worth befriending. Jiang Jingyi smiled. Yan Wei smiled awkwardly and said, "But we still have to think of a solution. We have to ask Qin Feiyang about this. After all, he is the main character of this matter." Jiang Jingyi took out an image crystal and sent a message to Luo Qingzhu. "1. Very soon, Luo Qingzhu's figure appeared. Jiang Jingyi said, "Qingzhu, go find Qin Feiyang immediately. Tell him we have something to discuss with him." Yan Wei added, "It's about Lin Yi and the Mermaid Princess." "Lin Yi? Mermaid Princess?" Luo Qingzhu was stunned and asked, "Are you talking about their battle souls?" "How did you know?" Jiang Jingyi and Yan Wei were surprised. Luo Qingzhu said, "The Blood Kirin told Qin Feiyang about this." Jiang Jingyi asked, "Then what does he think?" "He guessed that you must have sent us a message. So he asked me to tell you not to be impulsive. Just monitor the situation in Demon Capital." As for Lin Yi and the Mermaid Princess, when Luo Qingzhu said this, her expression suddenly became extremely melancholy. "What's wrong?" Jiang Jingyi and Luo Qingzhu looked at each other and looked at Luo Qingzhu suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said that if he really wants to kill the Mermaid Princess and Lin Yi, he will do it personally. Luo Qingzhu sighed. Jiang Jingyi and Luo Qingzhu's eyes trembled. Killing Lin Yi and Luo Qingzhu with his own hands was probably more painful than death for Qin Feiyang. In fact, we all know that he is reluctant to do so. But for the overall situation, for the sake of the common people, I think he will definitely be ruthless. Luo Qingzhu said. Jiang Jingyi and Luo Qingzhu nodded. Yan Wei exhaled and said, "Well, if there is any news, we will pass it to you as soon as possible." Luo Qingzhu nodded and exhorted, "You must protect yourself. In addition, according to our guess, now that your whereabouts are exposed, the demon ancestor should move to Demon Capital." Jiang Jingyi and Luo Qingzhu looked at each other, and there was a trace of anxiety on their faces. They hadn't thought of this before. In other words, they had already alerted the enemy. "Don't worry, don't blame yourself, and don't take the risk to inquire," Luo Qingzhu said. "What if the demon ancestor really moves to Demon Capital?" Yan Wei frowned. "Let nature take its course," Luo Qingzhu said. Sigh. Jiang Jingyi and Yan Wei sighed, and the phantoms quickly dissipated. Luo Qingzhu also put away the image crystal and sighed. "I really hope that the final outcome will not be too cruel." Everyone knew the position of Lin Yi and the Mermaid Princess in Qin Feiyang's heart. If he really killed the two of them, Qin Feiyang's heart would definitely bleed. And after that, Qin Feiyang would also activate the Divine Dragon Secret Art's fourth move, the Gate of Rebirth, to resurrect the two of them. This was a scene that Luo Qingzhu never wanted to see, because once the Gate of Rebirth was activated, Qin Feiyang would pay the price of losing all his cultivation. He might even die on the spot. Demon Capital. After searching the vicinity of the Demon Tower, there was no trace of Yan Wei and Jiang Jingyi. The Flame King hesitated again and again. In the end, he plucked up his courage and reported this matter to Sima Kuan. Without a doubt, Sima Kuan, who learned about this matter, was immediately furious and scolded the Flame King. But scolding the Flame King didn't help. Sima Kuan immediately ordered to search the entire city, not letting go of any suspicious person. At the same time, the state preceptor was also extremely angry. He was also quite disgusted with Sima Kuan. He had already told him to just kill Yan Wei and end everything, but he just didn't listen. Now Yan Wei had escaped. Although Yan Wei's strength was very weak, the current threat could be said to be greater than Qin Feiyang, because he could control the movements in Demon Capital and report to Qin Feiyang at any time. As for whether Yan Wei could pass the news to Qin Feiyang, there was no doubt about it. Although Yan Wei's image crystal was destroyed, he still had an accomplice. Since he was Yan Wei's accomplice, he must be able to contact Qin Feiyang outside. Therefore, after calming down, the state preceptor, as expected by Qin Feiyang and the others, immediately suggested to Sima Kuan to move to Demon Capital immediately. Inside the Space Divine item, Jiang Jingyi and Yan Wei had a worried look on their faces. It wasn't easy for them to pass the location of demon capital to Qin Feiyang, but they didn't expect that because of a moment of carelessness, their previous efforts would be in vain. Brother Jiang, we didn't think it through. If it was the young lord, he definitely wouldn't make such a mistake. Yan Wei shook his head and sighed. Yes. Let's not make any more trouble. Just monitor the movements here so that we don't cause any more trouble for Qin Feiyang. Jiang Jingyi said. Yan Wei nodded. If they could really help Qin Feiyang, it would be a good thing. But if the more they helped, the more trouble they would cause. Outside, the inner demon's tribulation wasn't over yet. Now he had gone through 98 heavenly tribulations, and there was only one left. But at this moment, whether it was Qin Feiyang, the other two, or the Blood Kirin, their hearts were extremely heavy, because the last heavenly tribulation was the real tribulation. And most importantly, the inner demons only had a wisp of consciousness left, like a falling leaf in the wind, floating in the void. It was hard to imagine. What would happen when the last heavenly tribulation fell? Crack! Boom! Blood clouds rolled in the sky, and thunder and lightning roared. The heavenly tribulation covered all directions, making the atmosphere extremely oppressive. Seeing that the last heavenly tribulation still hadn't fallen, Zhao Tailai couldn't help but say angrily, "How long is it going to take? Do we have to kill the inner demons to be satisfied?" This heavenly tribulation is used to kill the inner demons. Look at the inner demons' current state. They might not even be able to survive the previous heavenly tribulations, let alone the last one. It's almost impossible for them to pass the tribulation successfully. The Blood Kirin sighed. Young master, Zhao Tailai turned his head to look at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was silent. He raised his head and glanced at the blood-red lightning in the clouds. His eyes filled with determination. No matter what price he had to pay, he had to help the inner demons pass this tribulation successfully. Crack! After about 10 breaths, with a deafening sound, the last heavenly tribulation finally formed, carrying a destructive aura as it blasted toward the inner demons. Looking at the last heavenly tribulation, Zhao Tailai, Tang Hai, and the Blood Kirin's eyes almost popped out. This heavenly tribulation was at least 10 times bigger than the previous 98 heavenly tribulations. It was like a blood-red dragon roaring in the void. The aura it exuded was even more terrifying. Tang Hai said in a deep voice, "According to my judgment, the power of this heavenly tribulation is really the sum of the previous 98 heavenly tribulations." Zhao Tailai said, "With such a terrifying heavenly tribulation, unless a god descends, the inner demons will definitely die. This is fate." The Blood Kirin shook his head and sighed. "Life is in your own hands. Don't rely on others' charity." But suddenly, Qin Feiyang's voice rang out. The Blood Kirin turned to look at Qin Feiyang. When he saw Qin Feiyang's eyes, he asked in surprise, "What do you want to do?" "Today, I want to fight with the heavens." Qin Feiyang's eyes shone brightly. He suddenly stepped on the ground and turned into a divine rainbow. He soared 90,000 miles into the sky and headed straight for the heavenly tribulation. "Young master," Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai's expressions changed. The Blood Kirin was also extremely shocked. At the same time, Qin Feiyang and the Snow Python also opened their eyes wide. They looked at Qin Feiyang in horror. "What are you doing, my lord? This is my tribulation. I don't need your help. Back off." In the void, seeing Qin Feiyang rush toward the heavenly tribulation, the inner demons also roared angrily. In fact, he was worried about Qin Feiyang, because he had personally experienced the previous 98 heavenly tribulations. No one knew better than him how terrifying the last heavenly tribulation was. Qin Feiyang would definitely die if he rushed up rashly. "If I can't even protect you, then what's the point of having this kind of strength?" However, Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear to the inner demon's shouts. He said, without turning his head, You can go and protect the others. I'm just an inner demon. My existence is intolerable by the heavens. Are you an idiot to risk your life for me? The inner demons roared. You can think of me as an idiot. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, Old Zhao, old Tang, if I don't survive the task of rescuing my mother, and the others will be left to you. Chapter 1821. Tang Hai said expressionlessly, If you die, I'll go to the demon lord immediately. I'll go to Mu Tianyang too. Zhao Tailai said angrily. It was rare that he did not scold Tang Hai. Wait, one of you is with the demon lord and the other with Mu Tianyang. What should I do? The blood Kirin said quickly. Who cares? Do whatever you want. Zhao Tailai rolled his eyes. You! Qin Feiyang's expression froze. He shook his head helplessly and stared at the aggressive, heavenly tribulation. He smiled and murmured, It seems that I can't die yet. In that case, I'll try my best to survive. Boom! A monstrous battle intent roared out of his body. Yes, you must try your best to survive. The inner demons murmured and did not stop Qin Feiyang. Above the mountains and rivers, the snow python suddenly looked away and turned to Qin Yuan. He laughed and said, Qin Yuan, let's talk about conditions. Qin Yuan was stunned and said, Go ahead. His gaze never left Qin Feiyang. The snow python said, I want you to help Qin Feiyang, but after that, you have to give me your dog life. Qin Yuan finally looked away and said to the snow python, It's been so many years. You still haven't let it go? Let it go. The snow python smiled coldly and said, If it were you, would you be able to let it go? I can. Qin Yuan nodded. Do you really think you're a saint? You can say it so easily now because you haven't encountered it. When you do, you'll be crazier than me. The snow python snorted. Whether you believe it or not, I'm not lying. Qin Yuan sighed. Forget it. I don't want your dog life. Let's watch Qin Feiyang be destroyed by the heavenly tribulation together. The snow python sneered. Then let's watch quietly. Qin Yuan looked at Qin Feiyang again, his eyes full of anticipation. In the blink of an eye, Qin Feiyang was already very close to the heavenly tribulation. Even though he had yet to face the heavenly tribulation head-on, the terrifying destructive power had already caused his body to be drenched in blood. One could imagine how terrifying this heavenly tribulation was. However, he didn't look back, nor did he feel the slightest bit of fear. All he had was a firm belief. He had to survive. Armor open. All of a sudden, Qin Feiyang roared, and a suit of armor appeared on his body. However, this armor was not the Qilin armor, nor was it the armor that the Crocodile Emperor had given him, because the battle armor that the Crocodile Emperor gave him was already shattered when he fought with Emperor Hong. This set of armor had never been seen before. Other than the people around him, no one else knew about it. Rumble. The moment the armor appeared, the heavenly tribulation descended with a loud rumble and ruthlessly struck Qin Feiyang's body. Qin Feiyang immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, his face deathly pale. However, the armor on his body had actually withstood the heavenly tribulation. Zhao Tailai Tang Hai, what kind of armor is that? This scene shocked the blood Qilin so much that its eyeballs almost popped out. It looked as if it had seen a ghost. Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai did not answer the blood Qilin, but stared nervously at Qin Feiyang. Although the armor had withstood the heavenly tribulation did not disappear. It turned into a blood-colored thunderbolt power, drowning Qin Feiyang. Clang! The thunderbolt power continued to bombard the armor, bursting into dazzling flames. The snow python was shocked and angry. Qin Yuan, what's going on? Did you secretly give him that armor? Except for the Chang Shui and the castle that originally belonged to him, I have never given him any divine weapons. Qin Yuan shook his head, his old eyes shining with a strange light. This kid was really a surprise. Are you sure? The snow python raised its eyebrows. Qin Yuan nodded. Then what is going on? The snow python stared at Qin Feiyang in the image, its narrow eyes full of disbelief. It could actually withstand the last heavenly tribulation. The armor's grade had to be at least half a step away from the divine lord level. High up in the sky, Qin Feiyang, who was drowned by the heavenly tribulation, was not feeling well, although he had the blood-colored armor to protect his body, because the power of the heavenly tribulation had far exceeded the limit of what he could withstand. Others might not know about this armor, but he knew very well that it could help him block 90% of the damage. That's right, it was 90% of the damage. In other words, with the help of this armor, Qin Feiyang's body only suffered 10% of the full power of the heavenly tribulation. But even this 10% was not enough for his body to withstand. Streaks of blood appeared. His body was about to be torn apart. The heart-wrenching pain crazily attacked every nerve in his body. Even if he had merged with the flame of life, even if the power of his bloodline had been completely atavistic, he could not stop the trend of his body cracking. If it were not for the inner demons, he would definitely not continue to endure, because it was very likely that he would die. Crack! Suddenly, accompanied by a loud noise, a crack suddenly appeared on the blood-colored armor on his body. This change not only made Qin Feiyang's expression change on the spot, but even the inner demons were shocked and hurriedly flew toward Qin Feiyang. Don't come up! Qin Feiyang shouted. The inner demons stopped in the void and shouted, but in your current state, not only will you not be able to help, but you will also be killed by the heavenly tribulation. Just stay down there and watch for me, Qin Feiyang said angrily. Okay, the inner demons nodded. Crack! The crack on the armor became bigger and bigger. Purple gold dragon blood, like a waterfall, gushed out from the crack and dyed the sky red. Qilin armor, hurry up and come out, Qin Feiyang shouted. Hearing this, the weapon spirit immediately shouted in horror. Boss, this is the heavenly tribulation of the inner demons. You want me to go out and die? Qin Feiyang said angrily. Did I ask you to face it head on? The weapon spirit was stunned and suddenly said, I understand. Boom! Immediately, the Qilin armor appeared on Qin Feiyang's body. But it was not exposed outside, but under the blood-colored armor, it was close to Qin Feiyang's body. In this way, the Qilin armor did not have to face the power of thunder head-on, but only helped to share some of the pressure and protect Qin Feiyang's body. With the protection of the two divine armors, Qin Feiyang's cracked body was finally relieved a little. The purple gold dragon blood's recovery ability frantically helped to heal his wounds. However, this relief did not last long. As more and more cracks appeared on the blood-colored armor, the pressure on the Qilin armor also continued to increase. Boss, this is not the way. When the blood-colored armor outside is broken, both of us will be finished. The weapon spirit of the Qilin armor wailed. Hold on, Qin Feiyang shouted coldly. The weapon spirit said, Okay, I'll try my best to hold on, but you can't let me die here. Don't worry, neither of us will die, Qin Feiyang said. Hearing this, the weapon spirit's mood finally calmed down. However, the power of thunder showed no signs of dissipating. Qin Feiyang's eyes became gloomier and gloomier. This damn heavenly tribulation. Would it not stop until it killed him? Crack! More than 10 breaths passed. The blood-colored armor finally reached its limit, and with a loud bang it fell apart. The blood-colored battle art was broken, and the Qilin armor below naturally had to bear all the pressure. Although the power of thunder had weakened after more than 10 breaths, it was still not something the Qilin armor could bear. In just a few breaths, a crack appeared on the Qilin armor. It's broken. Boss, we can't hold on, let's retreat. The weapon's spirit cried out in horror. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and said, "Since it's broken, we'll hold on." At worst, they could give up this Qilin armor, as long as they could protect the inner demons. "Don't. Although it's broken now, it can still be repaired," the weapon's spirit hurriedly said. "It can be repaired?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes, any divine artifact with a weapon spirit has the ability to repair itself. As long as the damage is not too serious, as long as the weapon spirit is not destroyed, it can be repaired, but it will take a certain amount of time. And for a supreme grade divine artifact like me, its repairability is naturally stronger. The weapon spirit said. "I see." Qin Feiyang suddenly understood and said with a smile, "Since it has the ability to repair itself, then all the more you should bear it for me." If the weapon spirit turned into human form now, he would definitely have a crazy expression. If he had known this, he would not have said it. Rumble. Clang. The void turned into chaos. The earth within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles was shaking violently. The power of thunder was getting weaker and weaker. But at the same time, more and more cracks appeared on the Qilin armor. It looked like it had turned into a spider web. However, compared to the Qilin armor, Qin Feiyang's physical body was more seriously injured. Because the Qilin armor was not as good as the blood-colored armor, it could only help him block half of the damage of the thunder. "Boss, it's really not going to work. If this goes on, I won't be able to repair it." After more than 10 breaths, the weapon spirit cried out again. Qin Feiyang looked down at the Qilin armor, which was already in pieces. It seemed that this supreme-grade divine artifact had indeed reached its limit. He glanced at the power of thunder around him. If it were not for the Qilin armor, he would have been torn to pieces by the power of thunder in an instant. Because even if the power of the thunder was much weaker now, it was not something that a beginner war god like him could block. "Boss, I'm really going to retreat." The weapon spirit roared. "Let's go," Qin Feiyang said. "Then what about you?" the weapon spirit asked. Qin Feiyang flashed and entered the Black Tortoise realm. Immediately, the power of thunder rushed toward the inner demons like a waterfall. Why did the young master run away halfway? Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai were surprised. The Blood Kirin said he must have been unable to hold on, so he hid in the castle or the Black Tortoise realm. Zhao Tailai said angrily, "Don't talk nonsense. The young master is not that kind of person. When it comes to a matter of life and death, who isn't selfish? Qin Feiyang is no exception." The Blood Kirin sneered. But before it finished speaking, Qin Feiyang appeared again. The Qilin armor had disappeared, and his body was covered in blood. Seeing the power of thunder rushing toward the inner demons, Qin Feiyang's face darkened. He used the walk formula and teleported to above the inner demons. Boom! The power of thunder drowned Qin Feiyang again. Chapter 1822. This time, Qin Feiyang was not wearing any armor. Seeing the scene, Zhao Tailai, Tang Hai, the Blood Kirin, and the inner demons were all shocked. Before, the two armors could not withstand the bombardment of the thunder power, let alone a body of flesh and blood. Boom! Qin Feiyang's body was instantly torn open, but at the same time, an incomparably majestic life force emerged from Qin Feiyang's body like a raging wave. Immediately, the injuries on his body were quickly healed. The Blood Kirin was surprised. How could this kid's body hide such a terrifying life force? "It's the cedar." Zhao Tailai's spirit was lifted. "Yes," Tang Hai nodded. Only those tens of thousands of cedars had the ability to provide Qin Feiyang with such a huge amount of life force. The power of thunder was constantly destroying Qin Feiyang's body. The life force of the cedar was constantly repairing Qin Feiyang's body. This was equivalent to a war of attrition, the consumption of life force. If the life force of the cedar was exhausted and the power of thunder still did not disappear, then Qin Feiyang would really have no way to deal with it. Damn it! The snow python looked at Qin Feiyang in the image with a gloomy look. But Qin Yuan's eyes were full of relief. This little brat had already completely grown up. In the future, even without his help, he would be able to deal with everything. Qin Yuan withdrew his gaze and looked at the snow python with a smile. How about it? Humph! The snow python snorted coldly. Qin Yuan's eyes flashed slightly, and he said with a smile, How about we make a bet? A bet? The snow python looked at Qin Yuan with a trace of vigilance in its eyes. Qin Yuan said, Let's make a bet. In the battle between Qin Feiyang and the demon ancestor, who will win and who will lose? The snow python was slightly stunned and said playfully, Qin Feiyang's methods are indeed amazing, but compared to the demon ancestor, it seems to be a little worse. Are you sure you want to bet? Qin Yuan nodded. What's the bet? The snow python asked. Qin Yuan said, The space-time gate in your hands. The snow python raised its eyebrows and snorted. I knew you weren't at ease. Qin Yuan chuckled and said, The gate of time and space wasn't yours in the first place. Moreover, this old man didn't try to take it by force. How can you say that this old man doesn't feel at ease? He was actually mocking the snow python. This was because the snow python had forcibly snatched the gate of time and space from the Mu family. What kind of person was the snow python? How could it tell? He was rather annoyed and said, Then what's your bet? Haven't you always wanted this old man's life? This old man will use my life as the wager. Qin Yuan smiled. The snow python narrowed its eyes. Why did this old thing suddenly become so confident? Could it be that Qin Feiyang was still hiding something? Qin Yuan said, The opportunity was delivered in front of you, and you still don't dare to take it? The snow python flew into a rage out of humiliation. It snorted coldly and said, Let's bet then. Who's afraid of who? It's a deal then. Qin Yuan smiled. Above the demonic dragon island, the inner demons looked at Qin Feiyang, who risked his life to protect him. His heart was extremely complicated. Thinking back to the beginning, when he was just born, he was always thinking about erasing Qin Feiyang's consciousness and replacing it. Similarly, Qin Feiyang was also thinking about how to destroy the inner demons. However, he didn't expect that as time passed, their relationship gradually improved until today. They were even willing to die for each other. It was really, as the saying goes, the world was unpredictable. However, it was also because of this that the inner demons became more and more attached to everything around him. The feelings between him and Qin Feiyang were getting deeper and deeper. Don't die, or I will blame myself for the rest of my life. The inner demons murmured. Rumble. Crack. The power of thunder was still roaring. Although the power was not as strong as before, Qin Feiyang's body still couldn't bear it. The purple-gold dragon blood was like rain, dyeing the void red. The atmosphere at the scene was extremely heavy. Zhao Tai Lai and Qin Yuan didn't say a word. They were silently praying for the inner demons. Time passed quietly. The life energy of the cedar was almost exhausted. Qin Feiyang's situation was getting worse and worse. The blood Kirin said angrily, Although it is the last tribulation, it hasn't dissipated after so long. Isn't it too ridiculous? At this time, the power of the thunder was almost at the level of a god of war. However, Qin Feiyang was now an arrow at the end of its flight. Not to mention the level of a god of war. Even the level of a god of war could threaten his life. Zhao Tai's heart was burning with anxiety. Suddenly, he turned to look at the Blood Kirin and said, Blood Kirin, why don't you? Don't say it. The Blood Kirin glared at him. Do you know what I'm going to say? Zhao Tai Lai frowned. Nonsense. I know what you want to do when you raise your butt. Although the power of the thunder has been reduced to the level of a god of war, in the god of war realm, there's a world of difference between each level. Although I am only a god of war, and there is only a difference of one level, the power of the thunder is enough to kill me instantly. The blood Kirin said in a deep voice. Zhao Tai Lai was silent. The blood Kirin said, but don't worry too much. For Qin Feiyang, this might be a good opportunity. Opportunity? Zhao Tai Lai and Tang Hai were stunned and looked at it suspiciously. Yes. Look, now Qin Feiyang's body is being torn apart by the power of the thunder. With the help of the cedar, it is constantly being reconstructed and healed. In other words, his body is being tempered thousands of times. Then, when this tribulation is over, what will happen to his body? There will be a great change. He will become more terrifying than before. He might even be able to fight against a divine artifact with his bare hands. The blood Kirin said. Zhao Tai Lai was stunned and said, after hearing what you said, it seems to make sense. It doesn't seem like it. It has always been like that. You have all seen how terrifying this tribulation is. If he can survive, his body will definitely reach an extremely terrifying level. The blood Kirin said. Tang Hai said, although that is true, the premise is that he can survive. So it depends on his luck. The blood Kirin said. During the conversation, Qin Feiyang's life force was almost negligible. Obviously, the cedar's energy was about to be used up. But now it was not over yet. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and said gratefully in his mind, Seniors, let's stop here. Thank you. The cedar, which was hiding in his body, immediately withdrew its life force. Qin Feiyang's body was immediately bombarded by the power of the thunder and started to crack. The demon lord is still alive and Mu Tianyang is still out there. How can I be defeated here? Qin Feiyang roared. 3 types of divine power surged out and crazily clashed with the power of the thunder. The bloodline power also burned and repaired his body. At this moment, the power of the thunder and lightning had almost been reduced to the level of a low-level war god. He did not need to hold on for much longer. In a few breaths, or more than 10 breaths, the situation would turn around. He gritted his teeth and persevered. The intense pain caused by the cracking of his body almost made him lose consciousness. Crack! All of a sudden, his 2 arms were shattered under the power of the thunder and lightning. This unforeseen event immediately affected the hearts of everyone present. Young master, you must hold on. Zhao Tai Lai roared in his heart and clenched his hands tightly. Crack! Soon, Qin Feiyang's 2 legs were also shattered by the power of the thunder and lightning. No, this is my tribulation. How can I let him bear it alone? The inner demons suddenly roared and turned into a bloody light, rushing toward Qin Feiyang. At this moment, the power of the thunder and lightning had been reduced to the level of a low-level war god. It seems that I can retreat now. I will leave the rest to the inner demons. Qin Feiyang murmured, and his consciousness fell into darkness. The rising dragon art was also immediately deactivated. Qin Feiyang's cultivation level plummeted. But at the same time, the inner demons passed through the power of the thunder and lightning and entered Qin Feiyang's body. Although the power of the thunder and lightning had been greatly reduced, the inner demons still suffered a devastating injury when they passed through. Now, the inner demons only had a little bit of consciousness left. But in his opinion, it was enough. Whoosh! The next moment, Qin Feiyang opened his eyes again. His eyes were blood red. It was obvious. At this moment, the one who controlled this body was the inner demons. The inner demons looked arrogantly at the sky and snorted. If it weren't for me, I would have been killed by you. But now you can't stop me. Instead, I will borrow your power to make myself stronger. Boom! Controlling Qin Feiyang's body, the inner demons once again activated the rising dragon art. Divine power surged and blood surged. The power of the thunder and lightning around was absorbed by the inner demons and tempered Qin Feiyang's body. Seeing this, Zhao Tai and Tang Hai were relieved. It seemed that the outcome was set. However, the Blood Kirin looked at him angrily and shouted, "Nonsense! Nonsense! Nonsense! This is nonsense!" What? Zhao Tai and Tang Hai were shocked and quickly looked at the Blood Kirin. The power of the thunder and lightning has indeed been reduced to that of a low-level war god. If Qin Feiyang's body wasn't injured, he would be able to withstand it easily. But now, Qin Feiyang's body is like broken glass. It can't withstand such torment. If he doesn't stop now, Qin Feiyang's body will be destroyed by him. The Blood Kirin said angrily. When Zhao Tai heard this, he raised his head and looked at the inner demons. He said, "I think the inner demons won't do anything he isn't confident in." Don't you know the inner demons? The inner demons are the embodiment of evil. What can he not do? It is even possible that he wants to use this opportunity to kill Qin Feiyang. That way, he will be the only inner demons in the world, Qin Feiyang. The Blood Kirin said in a deep voice. This, Zhao Tai and Tang Hai looked at each other. If the inner demons were crazy, they would believe it. But if the inner demons wanted to kill Qin Feiyang, it was impossible. Don't doubt it. No matter how much the inner demons change, they can't change the nature of evil. No, we have to stop him. The Blood Kirin flew into the sky and rushed toward the inner demons with a murderous aura. It didn't care about following Qin Feiyang, because Qin Feiyang had a good personality and treated his subordinates well. But the inner demons were completely different. They were selfish, iron-blooded, and ruthless. If they followed such a person, there was no telling when they would die. Genius memorized this site's address. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 1823. Old Tang, what should we do? Seeing that the Blood Kirin was going to attack the inner demons, Zhao Tai didn't know what to do. No shit. The Blood Kirin doesn't trust the inner demons. Don't you trust them? Now we have to stop the Blood Kirin, Tang Hai said. Yes, the inner demons and Qin Feiyang were both very weak right now. If the Blood Kirin went to cause trouble, Qin Feiyang and the inner demons would both die at the Blood Kirin's hands. When Zhao Tai heard what Tang Hai said, he pulled out his axe and shouted, "Blood Kirin, stop right now! If you don't blame me for turning against you." Tang Hai grabbed his dagger and flew toward the Blood Kirin like a ghost. "Are the two of you stupid? I am doing this for Qin Feiyang's sake," the Blood Kirin shouted without looking back. The inner demons noticed what the Blood Kirin was doing, but they weren't nervous. Instead, their eyes glowed with a bloodthirsty light. Just as the Blood Kirin approached, the inner demons' eyebrows glowed red. When the red light appeared, an endless amount of murderous intent rushed toward the Blood Kirin. The Blood Kirin's pupils shrank. The next moment, the red light tore through the sky and left a foot-long wound on the Blood Kirin's body. The Kirin's blood gushed out. This power, this speed, the Blood Kirin was shocked. Could this be the scarlet grace that had crippled Sima Yuan? You came just in time. The inner demons laughed, and a red vortex appeared between his eyebrows. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew. The Blood Kirin's blood flowed into Qin Feiyang's forehead. Not a single drop was left. A moment later, his body's blood became stronger. Is this the kill spell? The Blood Kirin was shocked. But Qin Feiyang's eyebrows didn't have the same kill spell as before. This is the kill spell, but the kill spell has changed. Now it is just absorbing your god blood. The inner demon smirked. The Blood Kirin was angry. Why are you absorbing my god blood? Now, the kill incantation no longer absorbs blood to increase one's cultivation base. Instead, it transforms the blood into qi, blood, and life force. Your Qilin blood will be of great help to me right now. The blood-red hair of the inner demons fluttered. At the same time, he absorbed the Qilin's blood and converted it into Qi, blood, and life force to repair his body. On the other hand, he was using the power of lightning to temper his body. Bastard! When the blood Kirin heard this, it was furious. It turned around and prepared to run. But at this moment, Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai stood behind the blood Kirin and said, "You should help the inner demons. When the young master wakes up, he will reward you greatly. Phut! Why don't you donate the god's blood to him?" The blood Kirin looked annoyed. Zhao Tailai grinned and said, "The two of us only have ordinary bloodline power. How can we compare with your Qilin blood? There's no room for discussion." "Get out of my way," the blood Kirin said angrily. The inner demon smiled and looked at the blood Kirin. "If you dare to run, I will erase your soul." The blood Kirin's eyes flashed. When the inner demons reminded it, it remembered that it was under the control of a slave seal. If this had been Qin Feiyang, it would have struggled. But facing the inner demons, it didn't have the courage to do so. It just stood there and let the inner demons absorb its Qilin blood. A dozen seconds passed. The blood Kirin's eyes looked very weak. The power of lightning was almost gone. Zhao Tailai smiled and comforted it. "It will be over soon. Just hold on a little longer. Go away." The blood Kirin looked at him angrily. "It is easy for you to say that. Why don't you try? You would have sucked me dry. You're the one who bumped into me." Zhao Tailai chuckled. "Isn't this emperor worried that he would damage Qin Feiyang's body? How is this my fault? What kind of logic is that?" The blood Kirin roared. Yes, yes, yes. You're a man of noble character and unquestionable integrity, a man of sincerity. Look at how Tang Hai, and I admire you. It is like a surging river." Zhao Tailai smiled apologetically. "Go away. Just looking at you makes me annoyed." The blood Kirin shouted angrily. After another dozen seconds, the last trace of the power of lightning finally disappeared. The red vortex between the inner demon's eyebrows also disappeared. The blood Kirin quickly retreated and stood in the void not far away. It looked at the inner demons like a little girl who had been wronged. Its eyes were full of resentment. Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai looked at each other and were very happy. Boom! But suddenly, there was another deafening roar in the sky. Huh! Is the god's trial not over yet? Their faces changed as they looked up at the sky. They saw that the blood clouds in the sky were rolling more violently than before. A mysterious aura fell from the sky like a waterfall and shrouded the inner demons. The inner demons left Qin Feiyang's body and shouted at Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai, "Go and heal me." Qin Feiyang's consciousness had fallen into a coma. Therefore, when the inner demon left the physical body immediately fell downward. Okay. Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai, who were still in shock, nodded at the inner demons and swooped down. They held Qin Feiyang and landed on the broken ground. Zhao Tailai took out a healing pill and a regeneration pill and stuffed it into Qin Feiyang's mouth. Then he and Tang Hai looked up at the sky again. The blood clouds rolled as if a more terrible god's trial was brewing. But the inner demon's emotions were fluctuating. They were not afraid at all. Instead, they were very excited. Don't worry. The blood Kirin flashed and landed next to Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai. The two looked at it suspiciously. That's the reward for successfully passing the god's trial. Only by obtaining that reward can the inner demon completely condense a physical body. The blood Kirin pouted. It seemed that the blood Kirin was very unhappy with the inner demons. However, he couldn't be blamed. If it were anyone else, they would definitely be unhappy after encountering such a situation. Buzz. Not long after the blood Kirin finished speaking, The blood clouds in the sky slowly split open. A blood-red divine light emerged from the crack and fell toward the inner demons. Although the blood-red divine light did not have a terrifying destructive power, it had a mysterious aura. It gave people the feeling that it contained some kind of unknown power of law. The inner demons did not dodge. The blood-red divine light fell and immediately drowned the inner demons. The inner demons immediately began to absorb the blood-red divine light. The blood clouds in the sky gradually receded. In less than 100 breaths, the sky above Demon Dragon Island was covered by dark clouds again. The Blood Kirin said, "The gods' trial is over. Now we just need to wait for the inner demons to form a body. Then we will be done." Phew! Tang Hai and the other two heaved a sigh of relief. Zhao Tai laid Qin Feiyong flat on the ground. Then he squatted next to him and carefully examined Qin Feiyong's injuries. The Blood Kirin looked at the unconscious Qin Feiyong. Then it looked at Tang Hai and Zhao Tai and said, "You two, we are in the same boat now. Can you be honest with me?" Tang Hai put away his dagger and ignored the Blood Kirin. He turned and looked southeast. He was wondering if the Demon Alpha and Sima Kuin had moved to Modu. Zhao Tai looked at the Blood Kirin suspiciously and asked, "Be honest with what?" The Blood Kirin said angrily, "Don't play dumb. I am asking about the Scarlet Flash." "Scarlet Flash," Zhao Tai muttered and smiled. "You can ask the young master yourself when he wakes up." The Blood Kirin was annoyed and said, "Okay, let's not talk about the Scarlet Flash. What about the Scarlet Armor? Where did it come from?" This, Zhao Tai was hesitant. Okay. Don't talk about it. I know. You will definitely ask me to ask Qin Feiyong later. The Blood Kirin waved its claws and said helplessly. Zhao Tai grinned and continued to examine Qin Feiyong's injuries. Swoosh! After a while, in the sky, the blood-red light gradually disappeared. The inner demons also gradually appeared. At this moment, there was no weakness between his eyebrows. Instead, there was an extremely terrifying aura. Moreover, the consciousness that had been destroyed by the heavenly tribulation had been completely restored. When the last trace of the blood-red light was absorbed into the inner demon's body, a monstrous power exploded. At the same time, a huge amount of blood rushed out of his body. Only people who had a physical body could have blood. This meant that the inner demons had formed a physical body and was no longer a body of consciousness. Right now, he was a man of flesh and blood. His blood-red hair was flying. His eyes also seemed to be condensed out of blood. His 7-foot body was like the ruler of this world. He looked extremely majestic, but at this moment, he stood in the void, raised his arm, and looked at the skin on his hand. There was no joy in his expression. But it wasn't that he wasn't happy. It was just that he couldn't get used to it for a while. Was this a physical body with flesh and blood? He didn't have to hide in the inner world anymore. And he didn't have to compete with his original body. Before he had it, he was extremely eager. But after he really had it, he felt a little unreal, as if he was dreaming. "Am I dreaming?" The inner demons murmured. Suddenly, he raised his arm and pinched his face very hard. Pain. Extreme pain. It wasn't a dream. Now he really had a physical body that belonged to him. Ha! He laughed loudly. His eyes were filled with a mist of tears. For him, there was nothing more important and happy than having a physical body. I am no longer that disgusting inner demons. I am now a real person. The inner demons roared into the sky, and a terrifying divine power rolled out, drowning in all directions. Whoosh! Following closely, he swooped down, swept into the distance, and punched the ground. Boom! Crack! The ground collapsed, and ditches appeared everywhere. Thick dust and smoke covered the sky and the earth. The Blood Kirin looked at the inner demons and frowned. Is he crazy? I believe that the inner demons in this world, no matter who condenses a physical body, will be like this. Give him some time. Zhao Tailai laughed. Tang Hai suddenly asked, Old Zhao, how is the young master's injury? Zhao Tailai immediately frowned and said in a deep voice, Although his life is not in danger, it will take at least half a month for him to fully recover. How can half a month be enough? The demon ancestor only needs 3 days to fuse with the divine body. If we wait for Qin Feiyang to recover from his injuries, the demon ancestor would have killed all the people of the great Qin Empire. The Blood Kirin said. Chapter 1824. He wants to kill everyone in the Qin kingdom. Zhao Tailai was shocked. Although I am exaggerating, for sure none of the people of the Qin clan will escape. The Demon Alpha's goal is not just to rule the Qin kingdom. He wants to rule the entire Forgotten Continent. The Blood Kirin said in a low voice. Tang Hai sighed. If that day comes, the people of the 2 continents will be destroyed. That's right. With the Demon Alpha's personality, he won't treat the people of the 2 continents as well as Qin Feiyang. The Blood Kirin nodded. When Zhao Tailai heard this, he realized how serious the problem was. He said, if the young master hadn't fainted and entered the castle, he would have been able to recover quickly. But now, speaking of this, he frowned. How about later? The Blood Kirin was shocked. He said, Aren't you exaggerating? This emperor has also heard of the ancient castle's time array. It seems that 1 day is equal to 10 days. It is different now, Zhao Tailai said. Different? The Blood Kirin was shocked. Yes, the castle used to have a seal. After I became a war god, the 2nd seal of the castle was automatically unlocked. The time rules changed. Before, 1 day was 10 days. Now 1 day is 1 year. Zhao Tailai said. What? The change is that big? The Blood Kirin was shocked. Yes, but remember not to tell anyone about this. After all, it is too shocking. Zhao Tailai warned. I understand. The Blood Kirin nodded and started to think. 1 day was 1 year. 10 days was 10 years. 100 days was 100 years. In other words, cultivating in the castle for 100 years was only slightly more than 3 months in the outside world. This time difference was scary. It seemed that following Qin Feiyang was a good thing. Suddenly, the Blood Kirin seemed to think of something. He said in surprise, Wait, you said there was a 2nd seal. Does that mean there is a 3rd seal? Yes. Zhao Tailai nodded. When the 3rd seal is unlocked, will 1 day be 10 years? Or even 1 day be 100 years? The Blood Kirin was shocked. We will have to wait until the 3rd seal is unlocked, Zhao Tailai said. Even Qin Feiyang doesn't know? The Blood Kirin frowned. Zhao Tailai nodded. I'm looking forward to it. The Blood Kirin's eyes looked bright. He was planning to kill Demon Alpha and enter the castle. He would never come out again. With such a good opportunity, he definitely needed to go into seclusion and cultivate properly. Let's save this nonsense for later. Think about it first. How can we send Qin Feiyang to the castle to recuperate? Tang Hai looked at Zhao Tailai and the Blood Kirin impatiently. The Blood Kirin was silent for a moment, and then it said, You can find the inner demons. He and Qin Feiyang are one. They can enter the castle. It used to be possible, but now, Tang Hai frowned. Now that the inner demons had formed their own physical bodies, they could no longer enter and leave the castle freely. Did you think that just because I condensed a physical body, I would completely cut off my relationship with my true self? The inner demons broke through the air. Their blood-red eyes were like 2 seas of blood, striking fear into the hearts of those who looked at them. Isn't that the case? Tang Hai asked, whether I have a physical body or not. I was born because of my true self. The bond between me and him can never be cut off. After the inner demons said that a divine seal appeared in front of them. This is divine dragon seal. Tang Hai was shocked. That's right. The inner demons nodded. This divine seal was different from the divine dragon seal. Everyone knew that the divine dragon seal was purple gold. But the divine seal in front of the inner demons was blood red and had a murderous aura. But it was certain that this was the divine dragon seal, because the aura it exuded was no different from a perfect divine skill. Tang Hai swallowed and said, "So, you know everything that my true self knows?" "Of course. Didn't you see Emperor Hong and his inner demons?" As long as Emperor Hong grasps a technique, Heart Demon Hong can also grasp it. The inner demons said. "What about the war soul?" Tang Hai asked. "Of course. In short, although I have condensed a physical body, my true self and I are still the same person. We can communicate telepathically and share everything." After the inner demons said that, the divine dragon seal dissipated. Then, with a wave of his hand, the unconscious Qin Feiyang teleported and disappeared. Share everything. Tang Hai and Zhao Tailai looked at each other. Now, wasn't it equivalent to there being two Qin Feiyang? And there were two Qin Feiyang who were exactly the same in terms of means and strength. One Qin Feiyang was terrifying enough, let alone two Qin Feiyang. Now, even if the demon ancestor fused with his divine body, he might not be a match for Qin Feiyang and the inner demons. Zhao Tailai asked curiously, "If you are separated by two continents, can you and the young master still communicate telepathically and share everything?" "Yes. For example, if my true self is in the Great Qin and I am in the Forgotten Continent, we can still communicate telepathically. Or if I get a new divine technique after I cultivate it, my true self can also have it directly." The inner demons said. It seemed that he was in a good mood. Otherwise, with his personality, he would not explain so much to everyone. Unheard of. Zhao Tailai was secretly speechless. He chuckled and said, "Suddenly I want an inner demons too." "You? Even if I give you an inner demons, you won't be able to help him pass the tribulation." The inner demons said disdainfully. Zhao Tailai smiled bitterly. This was really a blow to him. Tang Hai said, "Then is your and the young master's cultivation realm the same as before? For example, if the young master is a beginner war god, you can only be a beginner war god too?" "That's indeed the case. But it's different from before. In the past, my cultivation realm was determined by my true self's cultivation realm. In other words, my cultivation realm is the same as my true self's cultivation realm. But now I, who have a physical body, can also cultivate. Moreover, my true self can also share the results of my cultivation. For example, if I break through to the beginner war god, my true self will also break through to the beginner war god. Similarly, if my true self breaks through to the beginner war god, I will also break through to the beginner war god." The inner demons said. Zhao Tailai said, "Can I understand it this way? In the future, you and the young master only need one person to cultivate, and the other person can go sightseeing, and his cultivation will continue to grow stronger?" "That's right. And if my true self and I cultivate in seclusion together, it's equivalent to two people cultivating at the same time. Our speed will be even faster." The inner demons said. Zhao Tailai smiled bitterly. "If we become so abnormal, how are we going to live in the future? So you have to work hard. Don't be left too far behind by my true self and me. Otherwise, you will be abandoned by us like trash." The inner demons laughed. "There are two of you and we are only one. No matter how hard we work, we can't compare to you." Zhao Tailai was helpless. You really believe his nonsense? If the young master would abandon us, then Fatso and the white-eyed wolf would have been abandoned a long time ago. Tang Hai rolled his eyes at Zhao Tailai. "That's right." Zhao Tailai scratched his head. The white-eyed wolf and Fatso could no longer help the young master. But now, weren't they still staying in the castle? They even regarded their safety as more important than their own lives. So, there was no need to worry about this at all. As long as they didn't betray the young master would never abandon them. The inner demons glanced at Tang Hai with a displeased expression. They wanted to scare Zhao Tai Lai, but they didn't expect this guy to expose them on the spot. How boring. Zhao Tai Lai looked at the inner demons and asked, "Then should we call you now?" "Nonsense. Of course, call me master." The inner demons said. Zhao Tai Lai, Tang Hai, and the Blood Kirin looked at each other with dissatisfaction. Qin Feiyang didn't let them call him master. What right did the inner demons have? What? You don't agree? The inner demons glared, and a terrifying murderous aura rushed toward the two men and the beast. No. Zhao Tai Lai hurriedly waved his hand and wondered, "Master, since everything can be shared, can you and the young master also transfer artifacts like the castle to each other across 2 continents?" "No," the inner demons said. "No." Zhao Tai Lai was surprised. "Yes, because artifacts are physical objects. They can't be transferred to each other through the mind and thoughts. But if I'm with my real body, then we can use each other's artifacts as we wish," the inner demons said. Zhao Tai Lai said, "In other words, as long as it's a physical object, it can't be transferred to each other across space." "Yes," the inner demon nodded. Then she lifted the corner of her mouth and said playfully, "But do you think we still need divine artifacts now?" Zhao Tai Lai was shocked. He smiled wryly and said, "We don't need them." "Why don't we need artifacts? A powerful artifact would be like adding wings to a tiger for US." The Blood Kirin was confused. The inner demons looked at the Blood Kirin and said, "Then tell me, how do the Red Terror and the Red Armor compare to the Dragon Tattoo Sword and the Kirin Armor?" "Of course, it's better than the Kirin Armor and the Dragon Tattoo Sword." The Blood Kirin didn't even think about it, but after that he looked shocked. He quickly said, "Wait, what do you mean? Are Crimson Cry and Crimson Armor not divine weapons?" The inner demon smiled but didn't say anything. The Blood Kirin saw this and looked at Tang Hai and Zhao Tai Lai. The two of them turned their heads away from the Blood Kirin, ignoring it completely. "Are you guys interested?" "Do you think of me as your friend?" the Blood Kirin asked angrily. He had thought that the Scarlet Grace and the Scarlet Battle Armor were 2 terrifying divine artifacts that had surpassed supreme grade divine artifacts. They might even be overpowered artifacts. However, he did not expect that the truth was not what he had imagined at all. Bastards, you don't think of me as your friend." "Okay, you guys are good. I'm going to leave now. Let's see which one of you will deal with Sima Kuin." Seeing the inner demons ignore him, the Blood Kirin was furious. He pretended to turn around and leave. However, when it turned its head to look, it realized that inner demon and the other 2 had no intention of stopping it. "Am I really leaving?" the Blood Kirin roared. The 3 of them didn't hear him. The Blood Kirin was furious. He turned around and glared at the inner demons, gnashing his teeth. Chapter 1825. Of course, it didn't dare to leave. It was just pretending. After all, it had betrayed the Demon Alpha. Without Qin Feiyang's protection, the Demon Alpha would definitely seek revenge. However, Inner Demon and the other 2's disregard for it really annoyed it. They treated it like an outsider. Swoosh! At this time, Qin Feiyang appeared without warning. The injuries on his body had healed. His aura was extremely terrifying. The Blood Kirin was shocked again. How long had it been? His injuries had all healed and his essence, chi, and spirit had returned to peak condition. This was the current castle? That was too scary. Zhao Tai Lai was also very happy. He immediately went forward and asked, Young master, did your body change? Qin Feiyong raised his arm and felt the violent power in his arm. He smiled and said, "It shouldn't be a problem for me to crush a mid-grade divine weapon with my bare hands." Zhao Tailai's eyes trembled. He was confident that he could crush a mid-grade divine weapon with his bare hands. How shocking! Qin Feiyong lowered his arm and looked at the blood Kirin with a smile. The crimson armor and crimson grace are indeed not divine weapons. They are not divine weapons! The blood Kirin was stunned and said in surprise. If they are not divine weapons, then what are they? They are formed by a divine art. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. He didn't explain further. He turned to the inner demons and said, "Congratulations! It's all because of you." The inner demons laughed. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, "With you here, I have more confidence in dealing with the Demon Alpha. But now you can't show up. I want to give the Demon Alpha a surprise." "That's what I was thinking," the inner demons said. Qin Feiyong waved his hand, and the inner demons immediately went to the castle. The blood Kirin came back to his senses and asked, "Qin Feiyong, what divine art is this? Is it so scary?" "You don't know what's good for you." The young master didn't explain. Obviously, he didn't want to say more. "Why are you still pestering him?" Zhao Tailai looked at the blood Kirin angrily. The blood Kirin looked angry. "I didn't ask you. Why are you interrupting?" The anger in Zhao Tailai's heart surged. All right. Let's not talk about it anymore. Let's go to that canyon and see if Shanghai has moved." Qin Feiyong looked toward the southeast, his eyes flashing with a cold light. It would be best if Mo hadn't moved. If they moved, they would have to wait for the demon ancestor to fuse with his divine body and fight him head-on. Although the demon ancestor had a heaven-defying divine artifact, he also had the help of the inner demons. In the end, between him and the demon ancestor, it was hard to say who would die on Demon Dragon Island. In the southeast, mountains rose and fell one after another. A huge canyon was located in the mountains. From afar, it looked like a giant beast lurking in the dark land. That was right. This was the canyon that Yan Wei had mentioned. Whoosh! Qin Feiyong and the others flew through the air like lightning. They stood above the canyon and didn't hide. They released their divine consciousness and searched every corner of the canyon. The demon ancestor knew that they already knew where Shanghai was, so there was no need to hide. Suddenly, Zhao Tailai's eyes flashed. He said, "Young master, I found a cave. It should be the place that Yan Wei mentioned." "Take us there," Qin Feiyong said. Zhao Tailai nodded. He turned into a stream of light and flew down the canyon. Qin Feiyong, Tang Hai, and the blood Kirin followed closely behind. After a while, the 3 people and 1 beast entered the depths of the canyon. They stood in the void and looked at the cliff in front of them. On top of the cliff, there was a small cave entrance. The hole was only 2 or 3 meters in diameter. It was pitch black inside. Qin Feiyong said, "According to Yan Wei, there is a strand of the demon ancestor's murderous intent in the cave. If it is here, we have to be careful. It is just a strand of murderous intent. As long as we are prepared, it will not be a threat to us." The blood Kirin smiled disdainfully and stepped into the cave first. Boom! Immediately, a terrifying murderous intent appeared. "It is here." Zhao Tailai's eyes trembled. He immediately took out his axe and prepared to fight. Qin Feiyong stared at the cave. His eyes were shining. "Blood Kirin, how dare you betray me?" After the murderous intent appeared, an angry shout sounded in the cave. That's right. It was the demon ancestor's voice. "Betray? If it wasn't for the blood soul technique, do you think I would have worked for you for so many years?" The blood Kirin's disdainful voice sounded. Then, the blood Kirin's ferocious power exploded. Immediately, with a deafening sound, the entire canyon collapsed. Whoosh! The next moment, the blood Kirin rushed out of the dust and smoke. It looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "The murderous intent has been resolved. But I didn't find Mo Du in the cave. I think he has moved. I didn't expect the demon ancestor to be so cowardly." Zhao Tai snorted. "Before the divine body fuses, he will not fight us head-on. Let's wait." Qin Feiyang smiled. Tang Hai suddenly said, "Young master, there is a problem. I don't know if you have thought about it." "What problem?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "The demon ancestor needs 3 days to fuse with the divine body because he doesn't have a time array. But Mu Tianyang's space treasure has a time array." Tang Hai said. "Mu Tianyang." Qin Feiyang narrowed his eyes. "Yes, young master. Mu Tianyang's space treasure has a time array. Then he doesn't need 3 days to fuse with Mu Tianyang's divine body?" Zhao Tai said in surprise. "I have thought about this. Although Mu Tianyang has a space treasure, his divine soul has not been successfully condensed. Moreover, when we fought at the divine site, he used up a lot of his divine sense. In other words, not only does he need time to fuse with the divine body, but he also needs time to condense his divine soul. So we don't have to worry too much. Besides, it's useless to worry because we can't spare any manpower to go to the Forgotten Continent to support him." Qin Feiyang said. Zhao Tai asked, "Then your great-grandmother and the others, I think they will have a way." "Do you know anything about your great-grandmother? She is cunning and scheming. Without full confidence, she will definitely not fight Mu Tianyang head-on. Let's focus on dealing with the demon ancestor. After we get rid of the demon ancestor, we'll go to the Forgotten Continent to support him." Qin Feiyang said. "Cunning and scheming? Scheming and scheming?" Zhao Tai was speechless. How could anyone describe their great-grandmother like that? Fortunately, Tan Tai Li was not present. Otherwise, she would definitely flip out. In fact, it's all the snow python's fault. If it didn't remove the time and space gate, we could take care of both sides. Tang Hai said, "What can we do? After all, it is the guardian of the Forgotten Continent and is a half-step divine lord. Even if it wants to deal with us openly, we can only watch. But what I don't understand is why it disappeared for no reason in the glacier forest." Zhao Tai frowned, his face full of suspicion. "There is nothing in the world without a reason. I think there must be a reason, but we just don't know." Qin Feiyang said. The blood Kirin pondered for a while and said, "According to my guess, it is very likely that Qin Yuan is restraining it." "Uncle Yuan?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Yes, because in today's world, only Qin Yuan has the ability to restrain the snow python." The blood Kirin said, "Uncle Yuan." Qin Feiyang murmured, scanning the void. If it was really Uncle Yuan, then Uncle Yuan must be somewhere now watching him. Demon Tower. Yan Wei and Jiang Jingyi really didn't have any other thoughts. They just focused on monitoring Lin Yi. During this time, Lin Yi didn't have any abnormalities. The Flame King came back once, but after reporting the truth to Lin Yi, he left the Demon Tower. As for where he was now, Yan Wei and Jiang Jingyi didn't know either. He might be guarding outside the Demon Tower, or he might be looking for them in Demon City. Just like that, time passed quietly. Suddenly, a buzzing sound sounded. Jiang Jingyi was shocked and quickly took out the image crystal. Buzz! The next moment, a sweet-looking woman appeared in the void in front. The woman was about 20 years old, wearing a red dress with 3 words embroidered on it. Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Who is she? Yan Wei glanced at the woman suspiciously and asked Jiang Jingyi. Jiang Jingyi smiled and said, "I think you should be able to guess her identity." When Yan Wei heard it, he turned his head and looked at the woman in red in surprise. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something and said respectfully, "Subordinate Yan Wei greets the mistress." Yan Wei? The woman was slightly taken aback. She looked at Jiang Jingyi and said, "What's going on?" "Didn't Brother Yen seek refuge with the state preceptor? He followed the state preceptor to Demon City, but not long ago his identity was accidentally exposed. I saved him," Jiang Jingyi said. Qin Feiyang's mother was shocked and said quickly, "Then your identity?" Jiang Jingyi shook his head and said, "My identity hasn't been exposed yet, but what?" Qin Feiyang's mother asked. "Nothing." Jiang Jingyi shook his head. He originally wanted to say that he and Yen Wei were in the Demon Pagoda, but after thinking about it, he decided to continue hiding it. Jiang Jingyi asked suspiciously, "Why did you send me a message?" Qin Feiyang's mother looked at the two of them in confusion and said in a deep voice, "I found out about the location of Demon City." "What?" Jiang Jingyi and Yen Wei looked at each other, and their faces were filled with ecstasy. This was really great news. "How did you find out?" Jiang Jingyi was curious, but his face suddenly changed, and he asked in surprise, "Did you go to the Demon Palace?" "I didn't go to the Demon Palace." Qin Feiyang's mother shook her head. "What is the Demon Palace?" Yen Wei looked at the two of them in confusion. The Demon Palace is the palace where the demon ancestor is in seclusion. Demon City is divided into 3 major districts: the Outer City, the Inner City, and the Demon Palace. The Demon Palace is inside the Demon Palace, located in the center of Demon City. It is equivalent to the residence of the Great Qin Empire's emperor. In the entire Demon City, only the war gods under the demon ancestor are qualified to enter. Wait, didn't you come from the Demon Palace? Why don't you know about this? Jiang Jingyi was suspicious. Yen Wei nodded and said with a smile, "Although we stayed in the Demon Palace for a while, Sima Kuan didn't explain the situation of Demon City to me and the state preceptor." "In that case, the state preceptor has never been to Demon City before." Jiang Jingyi smiled and looked at Qin Feiyang's mother. He frowned and said, "Since you didn't go to the Demon Palace, how did you know about the location of Demon City?" You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.